Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me. This is my opinion piece for the Exeter Township Supervisors meeting that was held on October 12th, 2020. I'm going to talk about 5 items. The first thing I'm going to discuss is the chef, then the Kubota Tractor, and I'm going to skip to the refinancing, the payments to the pension plans, the meetings, and then I'm going to have a discussion about the refinancing as my last item. So a lot of things that going on in this meeting. I wish I could talk about them more, but this is going to be a rather lengthy opinion piece to begin with the things that have been going on. So let's talk about the chef. This is, to me, professionally working in business for so many years, this is absolutely ridiculous what I saw with his presentation. The agenda, well, before I get into the chef, let me just make this very clear point. The chef is here doing this ridiculous presentation because it's a political payoff. I believe that there were some people that helped Mr. Casadis, this is my opinion, Mr. Casadis get elected as an alternate to the GOP convention. And in return for getting elected, his favor is to hire this guy, and we're going to pay him over $5,000. Just really crazy, you know. It's not going to benefit this community at all, and I'll explain why later on in a few seconds. But it's just juice for this goose. And Casadis, this is the things that he does. And if there's any way we can ever get him off the board, we should do it. But it looks like we're stuck with him for this year and another 3 years. But if you re-elect this guy, you know, it's a huge mistake. And I hope that you learn by the time that we re-elect him that it's not worth it. He's costing us too much. This is the guy that cost us $4 million related to the Reading Country Club, $200,000 related to a federal lawsuit, all right? Anyway, so this is a political payoff. So the agenda said, if you read the agenda, that this was going to be a brief presentation. And it wasn't brief at all. It lasted 43 minutes and 46 seconds. And if I was just to give you an idea of how I felt as I watched this, my feeling was at the time, it was like watching paint dry, okay? If this guy graduated from Cornell, it wasn't in finance, I can tell you that. But most of the information what he presented was easily found out on the internet. Well, so we paid someone $5,000 to just go out and get stuff off the internet and put it together and present it to 5 supervisors who are too lazy to do their own work. And we have this huge staff. They're not doing it either. I'm telling you folks, the waste in this township is enormous. So most of this information easily found, and Chef Keith simply regurgitated it. Worthless information that's not going to help us. Because in the end, you'll hear in his presentation, someone asked him, what about COVID-19? Well, all the numbers I presented to you are really blown out of the water. It changes the whole idea of what we're doing here. So they don't really know. The other thing was the presentation was supposed to be given months ago. He actually broke his contract with us. I think he was going to give it in a more timely manner. But most of the information that he presented to us was from the perspective of the leasee. And what we really need to do is look at it from the perspective of us, the lessor. So what are we looking for in potential vendors, okay, that are going to actually lease this property? Are we going to do it on a straight lease? Is it going to be a triple net lease? What controls are we going to keep in place for us? Tucker, I have a puppy here, and I kind of indulge him when I shouldn't, and he's here playing with his toys. That's what you heard there. So back to the chef. So this presentation is what someone would look at if they were planning on leasing this facility and running their operations out of it. And I'm really concerned about some of the stuff that the chef presented, especially the couple worksheets at the beginning. They're all zeros. I mean, what's that all about? That's crazy, isn't it? And then when he talks about the revenue and the amount of money that could be generated, we're looking at entrees that cost $13.50. This is another crazy thing. We want something that's fine dining. We have, these restaurants that anybody could go to and get those kinds of foods. The sole chef here, I don't know what he had in his mind, but I think we should be working towards a fine dining situation, not something that's $13. We could get that anywhere now. So think about that. And his contract, when I look at this, it was only, he didn't sign it, it was only signed by Greg Gaultier, but he promised the engagement for the complete project will be $5,500. So they'll probably pay him off, right? But he was supposed to provide a feasibility site survey and include, but not limited to, agenda, location, demand, demographics. I didn't see any of that. Historical data and physical plant analysis. You see any of that in this presentation? Repair and maintenance assessment. Absolutely nothing there in his presentation. CG&S and FF&E requirements. Not a thing. Not a thing. Management team descriptions and qualifications. We didn't hear that. We didn't see it. Event sales briefs. Oh, we might have heard a little bit about that, but that was in a generalized situation with the overall restaurant statistics. The product, gracious hospitality. Marketing, planning, and conditions. It was absurd, New revenue centers. We know what our revenue centers are. We're food, beverage, and banquets. All right? General store and direct-to-consumer sales. Proposed operation review. I didn't see that except his insinuation that we could be a Shady Maple operation. Is he serious? Really? And then he was going to present the financial file, which would be a capital budget. Well, there wasn't any capital budget. He didn't do his homework to go in and review and see what kind of capital improvements needed to be made. He didn't even include the HVAC system that we're going to be spending $300,000 for. And there's much more. It needs to be handicap ready. The kitchen is a mess. And we need a dumbwaiter to get food up to the second level now that that's built out. Sales projections are ridiculous at this point. It depends on who the lessee is, what kind of foods we're going to have. So it's just a waste of everyone's time. Labor projections as well. This is something that the lessor would be concerned about. The lessee would be concerned about, not the lessor. Why do we care what the labor projections are? Someone else is going to run it. We're going to lease it to them. Budget assumptions, the same thing. The only budget assumptions that we need to be concerned about are things that we agreed to pay for before the lessee takes possession, signs the contract. And these annual operating budgets, operating budget summary, projected sources and uses of cash. We didn't see any of these things in his presentation. And the 5-year operating projections. This guy is just out in left field. I think he took on more than he really could handle. But again, when you look at this, you understand that it was a political job on us. So with that, I'll say enough of that on the chef. The next thing is the Kubota Tractor. Okay, this is an effort in uncreative finance and also fuzzy accounting. If you listen to what Jen Savage and the supervisors along with Joe Staub are talking about, it's absolutely ridiculous. They claim that this Kubota Tractor is in the budget, but as being financed. all right? So they decided that, Staub says, well, we have the money, let's just pay cash. So let's blow up the budget even more than it already is blown up. And the budget, you know, it's contrary to what we approved in the budget. So you're actually breaking you made a motion to accept this budget. So now you're breaking the decision that you made. And the golf club boys are the ones that want to do all this. There's no question about it. Do we need this Kubota tractor now? No. We could refurbish the old one. What did they say it needed? The only thing that was clear was it needed 4 tires. So for $4,000 in tires, we're going to spend $30,000 for a brand new tractor. Okay. Fuzzy accounting on top of that as well. So more wasted money, all coming out of the sewer fund proceeds. So the next thing we'll talk about is the pension plan. The pension plan and their contributions. Well, we donated December 23rd, 2019, $9,575,875 to the pension plan. Now, there were no reports presented. There were no analysis made of the unfunded liabilities. Why? There should be some type of information regarding the unfunded liabilities, and if it's necessary to really make this contribution. Why am I focusing on this? Because we want to keep this money in the township's name so that we can earn the interest. And when it's time and we need to increase the pension plan payments, we could do that. But there's not one word about what the unfunded liabilities are in these pensions. It behooves them to do that. It's a disgrace to this township that they just act on issues and do not present the facts. So it's just one ridiculous thing after another. I also want to talk about the open meetings. Many municipalities around us are doing everything they can to open up their meetings to their constituents, to their taxpayers, except us. We are the richest. We have more assets than any of these other municipalities around us, yet we're not getting any effort by our supervisors to find a way to do it. They say that they can only have 9 people in the meeting. That's a joke because they're presenting to us the old meeting room, which is a fire hazard to begin with and can only hold so many people. We have the Reading Country Club. We have the library that's closed. We could use it now. We have Dunn Center. There are plenty of venues where we can have meetings where people can attend. And those who can't get in, they should still project this meeting over Zoom. That should never go away in the future. It should always be Zoom so people can watch it from home, but we should have it so people can attend it as well. So it's disingenuous of them, and there's a reason why they're keeping it closed. They keep us at arm's length. They can do what they want. It prevents, we can't really make comments because there's not enough information to derive any type of sense of what's going to happen and what they're going to talk about. And by the time they do, it's too late. You can't really make a comment at the next meeting. And if you did, you'd only get 3 minutes on non-agenda items. So they're not really fair to us. They enjoy the seclusion they're getting. And we have the means and the assets to do this, but they'll give us excuse after excuse. But don't you believe it. They love the situation they're in now. They're going to take us through the rest of the year. And if it's possible, even though they're claiming January, they will still keep the meetings closed. So I saved the best for last. The refi. They're trying to confuse the public is what they're doing and trying to confuse everyone else. But this refinancing is completely unnecessary. No need to refinance. And the reason why is they're worried about the balloon payments, really, but they're also trying to free up more money in the next 5 to 10 years so that they have, in my opinion, more money they could steal or waste. They're very inefficient with our money. They don't care. So, but we have a 7 million CD that matured last year, I believe. That's plenty of money to cover all the balloon payments that are due. Now, they took 2.4 million of that 7 million CD and used it to buy the promenade, by the way. So, but there's over 4 million left, and that's about what is needed to handle the balloon payments. And I got a schedule from them. I'm going to put that in my presentation when you get a chance to review this. It'll be the first slide you see, and hopefully it's not too small, but basically what it is, I'm looking at the 2015 A bonds. These are bonds that were used to refinance the purchase of the Running Country Club. It was actually, I think, the second refinancing. So now they want to do it again. But if you look at the schedule, you'll see that the first 3 years, the bond coupon rate is 2%. It's excellent. And then it goes up a little bit. 2026 will be 2.35%. And then from 2027 to 2033, 34, 35 to 2035, it'll be 3%. And then the last 2 years, it goes up to 3.6%. But it says that if we just go with the schedule and continue paying as it is, at the end of 2037, we will have paid off these bonds. It would have cost us $6,925,000 to do so from 2020 to 2037. Now, I'm going to show you another schedule presentation after my discussion on this that will compare that chart pretty much to what they're going to do with refinancing and how that's going to look. And what they don't reveal is what that interest rate is supposed to be. And they back end load the payments so that in the first 10 years, they have maybe an extra 100,000 every year that these guys can manipulate and abuse instead of paying it off. And what you should note is that the total cost for maturity on these refinance bonds are going to be $7,244,594. And when you see my presentation, I try to make it very simple and clear what's going on so that everyone can understand it. And you'll see that there is no savings. There's not. In fact, it costs us over almost $600,000 more. Now, the board also, in their infinite wisdom and their lack of understanding of finance, has decided to use $2.4 million of cash that we have from the sewer plant to pay down these bonds. Now, that's a mistake, Tucker. Quiet. It's a mistake because this is money in our hands. Why would you give it up? You know, I've never been in favor of this kind of thing. Pay the bonds off. We borrowed the money. The interest rates are not exorbitant. Let's go with what we have. You know, keep that cash in our hands because it's, again, a very myopic view of these supervisors that because when the interest rates start rising, and they will rise, we will see the day not too far away when we're getting 5 or 6% on our cash. And that's a lot of money on $40 million. Unfortunately, it's $40 million is not going to be there when we need it, okay? So look at my second chart where it compares the current debt on this 2015 A bonds and compares it to what it looks like with their refinancing. It's not good. And what we have is a group of supervisors who simply do not understand what they're doing. I can't blame PFM too much. They're out to make a commission, so they want this to happen. They're doing what the Board of Supervisors are asking them to smooth out the payments, but that's not necessary. What's disingenuous of both parties is to try to tell us that we're saving money, because we're not saving any money. We're just kicking the can down the road, and it's going to be up to future generations to pay it. We already know that they have in the budget to spend $20 million on the promenade, but that's not the end of it. It's going to end up being all the money we have. They're going to suck out all the cash that they can to these contractors that they're going to hire from out of the county, probably from Conshohocken. They're related to some people you already know that do deals inside this our community and pretty much control the two board members, Spees and Casadas. They're not smart enough to figure out all this stuff. They're just doing what they're told to do. Trust me. We got to get rid of them as soon as we can. And I need you folks to start looking at what they're doing, asking questions, and criticize them. Now, take a look at the two schedules that I'm going to show you. The one that I got from the township, which is the unrefunded payments schedule of the 2015A bonds. The second one is, we'll show you a comparison of the same thing, the current bond situation versus what PFM says they're going to do in refinancing just the 2015A bonds. And I think it'll show you how they try to deceive us. And it is deception. There's no question about it. So enjoy this and enjoy the video of the meeting. Remember, we're dealing with people that simply do not care about our community. That's obvious, and it should become more and more obvious each time I do these opinion pieces. Thank you for listening to me, and have a good evening. This is a schedule that I recently received from the township regarding a right-to-know request I submitted. And these are specifically the 2015A bonds. These were issued to refinance the Reading Country Club purchase. And as you can see, if you look closely, that this arrow, item A, shows you the interest rates that we're paying on these bonds. 2% for several years in the beginning. It later goes up to 3%. So these are very good interest rates that we're paying to the bondholders. Nothing really terrible that I see there. No reason to refinance them for this rate. And then you'll see item B, which is the total amount of money that we would pay out if we just left these bonds alone and paid them to the end of the maturity. And you can see that what we'll pay is $6,925,085. It's important to keep this in mind because I'll show you later what the total amount we will pay if we refinance these 2015A bonds, as PFM is suggesting that we do. This is a very important slide. I hope everyone will take the time to study this. I've made it as easy as I could possibly make it for everyone to understand. PFM, I think, did not present the information in a way that everyone could clearly understand it, and that's the way they like to do it. They want to make this stuff look like it's really complex when it's really not that complex to begin with. And our 5 supervisors have no clue what they were looking at. All they wanted to see was that their debt payments would be flattened out every year so that they'll have more money in the early years that they can blow frivolously on things that like they're doing today. So let's look at this first issue here, A. So what I'm doing is I'm adjusting the left side of this report because you can see if you compare the current outstanding debt to the schedule that PFM presented, 2020 is not in their presentation. So we want to subtract out the $238,978 from the total at the bottom of the schedule on the left, which has $6,925,085. So we'll subtract out that 2020 payment. So our total then, to compare to the PFM schedule, is really $6,686,107, which is the amount that they're actually going to refinance for 2021. So what we want to do then is compare this amount, because the schedule on the left, if we left everything as it is, and I showed you in an earlier slide that these bonds were paying 2%, 3% on, we would end up paying forward going $6,686,107. However, if you look at the refinancing plan just for the 2015A bonds, and they're claiming a $300,000 present value savings cost, well, just ignore that, because what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the bottom line. What would we be paying out if we paid these off to maturity? And as you can see here, we would end up paying $7,244,594 versus the $6,686,107. So you don't have to be a genius to figure out in item C, subtracting the quantity in item B from quantity from the schedule on the right of $7,244,594, and it would cost us $487 more. So there's madness. There's logic to their madness, because a couple things are going to happen, and you can see the payments, they go down lower in the refinancing scenario. So they're trying to push everything in the back end so that they have more money to, I don't know, in my opinion, steal it, misuse it, abuse it. But it's $558,487 more. There is no savings, folks. Don't buy this blarney that they're spouting out to us, okay? It is more. It's common sense. Compare the two. All right? So they've agreed to do this. Actually, they've agreed to put $2.4 million of our own money to even lower it further. So it's really ridiculous. I wanted to compare this just to 2015A bonds, which is their focus right now, to show you that how we're being taken advantage of. This doesn't make any sense to me. The only people that really benefit from this are going to be PFM, who earn commissions on doing the refinancing for us. And you can see also it pushes our debt out this is the Running Country Club debt. I mean, we keep pushing it out and pushing it out. So you can see that if we go with our original plan, we pay all this off at 2037. But now they're going to push it out to 2044. Okay? So that's 7 more years and $558,000 more dollars. It's from an FP&A perspective, financial planning and analysis, which none of them know anything about. For a municipality, this doesn't make sense. You're pushing this debt out to future generations. And we should be paying this off right now, today, keeping the original schedule. And the first couple of years on our left-hand schedule here, you can see the township's food and beverage business was contributing $250,000 a year to these payments. So running the food and beverage business was covering this debt for these years, except they've blown it up. It sits there idle, and it's their responsibility to maintain our assets, and they haven't been doing it. It's fallen apart. So don't believe everything these guys are telling you. I'm showing you clearly and plainly how to analyze the numbers that they're giving us. This is all an attempt to overlook issues and to just give these 5 supervisors extra money in the first 10 years. So it's not good for us. Tell them, email them, confront them when you see them in public, and tell them you don't want to do this. It doesn't make any sense. And we had a $7 million CD that came, that matured, that we can use to pay off any of the balloon payments that are coming forward. So they'll give you the excuse that we've got these big balloon payments coming due. This is just a misguided effort to take advantage of the township's funds. We're a very rich township, and they're exploiting that. And they have people behind them that are going to be getting this money when we give out the contracts to people from outside of this county that are going to do this building if they really get it passed, to do the building up at the promenade. So don't buy this. $558,000 more in taxes we'll have to pay out to these bonds, and for more years. So think about this, and if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to have you contact me, and I'll show you how this works. This is the last slide. I wanted to show you what I'm doing here is taking, the finance guys' numbers that they showed us in the meeting. And on the left-hand side, I'm showing you a chart that shows the current debt, the money we owe. And on the right-hand side is what they're telling us. Jamie from PFB or whatever it is telling us is going to be our payments after they refi. All right. And I just want to make a note here, number A. That number is really our 2020 debt service payments. And as Jennifer Savage has indicated in the recent supervisors meeting, that we've made all of our debt payments for 2020. So we can actually take those out, take that number out on both charts. But even if we don't take it out, if we leave it in, the number remains the same. The estimated savings over the course of these years from 2021 to 2044 will be the same. The savings amount will be the same. And I'll show you what that is in a second. And then if you look at B, I'm just showing you that if it's hard to read the totals on both graphs, but those are the totals with the 2020 debt service payments in there. And you can see I do a little calculation and back it out and see. These would be the numbers if you took out the $788,000. And in D, our savings estimate is $100,000. That's what we're going to save in like 23 years. But are we really saving $100,000? Because what we don't have in here are all the costs of refinancing. So what they've done is they're not reducing our debt really. They're just pushing it out. And they're making the early payments smaller so that this Board of Supervisors, which I consider extremely corrupt, will have more money to spend and transfer to other companies that they work with. So $100,000, all this for $100,000. And when you factor in the fact that Mr. Staub wants us to pay $2.4 million up front, it's even worse. And that number's not talked about here. It's not integrated in these numbers. But they've decided to spend additional $2.4 million to lower the debt. And what this does is it just flies in the face of logic. Now, you'll see if you look at all the data that Jamie has provided, there's boxes in there about the present value of savings. Well, it all has to do with time value of money. The old thing about $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. So if that's true, and as far as I know, those dynamics have not changed. So we're going to give up $2.4 million today for future savings. It doesn't make sense. We've got that money in our hands now. We should not spend it. It's coming out of the sewer fund proceeds, which they're spending like madmen. And I think it's a mistake. Mr. Staub has suggested this, and it tells me that he knows very little about financial planning and cash flows. He's just a mortgage broker. And why they're doing this, I really can't explain it to you. It doesn't, because it's illogical from the beginning to the end. We should not spend this money. We should keep it. But it looks like they've already decided to go with that scenario. So the people of Exeter Township, we suffer from these people who do not allow the public to get involved in the dialogue. We're not allowed to ask pertinent questions. They shut us out. And this is the result of that. Very poor decision making, very poor planning. If I could keep $2.4 million in my pocket and push it out to pay off this debt with cheaper dollars, because that's what inflation is going to do. And they talk about the fact that the interest rates are low now. That's not going to be the case in the future. And I want to remind you that these two charts here are looking at our total debt. So I showed you the chart earlier, just looking at the 2015A bonds and how we're not saving any money on that. This looks at the total debt situation. So finally, if you look at E, and I basically say after refi expenses, there are no savings. There's nothing. You know, really, $100,000 savings over 23 years or so? That's ridiculous. And you know what's going to happen? Jamie and his team are going to come back and say at some point in time, well, we think you should refinance again. So all it is smoothing out the payments, which is what they're really wanting to do. But they've deceived us. They do not show us really what's happening. They make us think that we're saving money. In fact, Jennifer Savage made a comment, I believe, in the budget meeting, where she said we expect savings of as much as $500,000. Well, you can see it's not even close to that. She doesn't know what she's talking about, really. She is not qualified to be in the position she's in, and our township suffers. We have wasted so many millions of dollars by the ineptitude of a few people. David Speece and John Casadas are running this show. And you can see this show is about how to create a disaster in a very wealthy township. So I urge everyone to get on the phone, get in the emails. If you know these people personally, ask them, what are they thinking? And what I've done is I presented to you with these couple slides just the basic, really information you need to look at, the bottom line, so to speak. These are not my numbers. These are Jamie's numbers. This is the finance company that's going to refinance our bonds. And as you listen to the presentation, there's like no questions from the Board of Supervisors. And I can tell you there's no questions because they don't understand what they're looking at. But I've kind of reduced it down to its simplest form, looking at the bottom line. And I hope you can see what I've done here. And if you have any questions, please contact me. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But this is all nonsense. It's all smoke and mirrors. And it's wasting our money. It's not necessary. We have the money to pay the balloon payments off. We should let the debt go. The interest rates are very nice for us as they are. So this is the last slide as you move into the meeting video. Pay attention to what they're saying and remember what I've shown you here. Thank you.
Okay, good to go.
Thanks, Larry. I'd like to call to order the Monday, October 12th, 2020 meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Please rise for the pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is the flag up there on the mountain somewhere? Very good. Roll call. Mr. Staub? Here. Mr. Galtier?
Here.
Ms. Kircher?
Here.
Mr. Casadas?
here.
And Dave Spees, I'm here. Public comments, agenda items. Laurie?
There were none submitted.
None submitted. Alrighty. Regular approvals. The regular minutes, September 28th, 2020.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular minutes for September 28th, 2020.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Special budget meeting minutes for October 5th, 2020. I'll make a motion to approve the special budget meetings minutes from October 5th, 2020.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Disbursements, October 12th, 2020.
I move that we approve the disbursements for October 12th, 2020 as submitted.
I'll second.
Further discussion? I think Jen had a few clarifications from questions Joe had.
Just a couple.
Sorry about that.
That's muted.
Muted. All right, there was 3 invoices we wanted to review tonight. One was for Safer for $3,000. This was the IT service that we actually canceled. We talked about this a few times. However, we were notified by BlackCipher that we missed a payment back for the May 2020 invoice. It appears we never actually received the original invoice. So we double checked our records and did verify that this payment was never made. So we will be paying this invoice today, and then we'll be paid in full with BlackCipher. Number 2 was the Rick's printing invoice for $1,100. This was for a postcard that we mailed to all residents, trying to reduce future newsletter printing costs. The postcard was advertising the electronic newsletter and also signing up for the Swift Reach emergency communication program. I know Laurie and Greg have talked about this in prior meetings through the communications committee. Number 3 was an invoice for $5,800 to Stanley Steamer, which was for carpet cleaning over at the country club. This was actually ballroom carpet cleaning that we had to have done after there was a water intrusion due to a clogged roof drain.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen. Any questions from anyone else?
I have some questions. I'm trying to find it now. There were a lot of cash payments this time, listed under cash. And guess I didn't notice it before, but I'm trying to find out why they were all listed under cash account, a cash account. Can you explain that, Jennifer, so I understand it?
All of our payments come out of a dispersing cash account. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by a cash account.
Well, it just says cash. And, I know that something of a small amount can come out under a cash account, but I'm just wondering why there were so many. And this is a large amount, I'm sorry, a big report, so it's,
We don't make any cash payments. We don't have cash that we make payments out of in the office. We have a very small petty cash fund, which is $100 in the vault that we use to send people if there's parking costs or something. All of the reports that you're reviewing, the ones that are labeled check disbursements, the report, those are physical checks that we cut that are signed by 2 people. The ones that are labeled electronic, those are actually a program that we use where we pay bills via like a virtual credit card. So we send the vendor a virtual credit card number they process through their credit card machine. And the benefit of doing that is, of course, the vendor gets their payment a little bit quicker than the check going through the mail. And we also get revenue share back from the vendor that we use. So we get a couple $100 of revenue share back for utilizing that program. But none of these payments you're reviewing are made via cash. They're all either a check or, like I said,
right, I understand it'd be a check, but the vendor is all cash account. And then there's different names and they, at the.
Okay, the top of the report, it says the cash account is 00 and then 10000. That's because it's coming out of the dispersing account AP checking. That is just a cash account that we have where all of our checks are paid out of.
Okay, I didn't understand. No, I know you weren't taking cash out.
Okay.
I just,
we have about 25 different checking accounts for the different funds, and we have 2 of those accounts. One where the checks are cut out of, and that's the dispersing AP account, and then we have one called a Visa clearing account where all of the electronic payments are made out of, and the money from each fund is transferred into those funds for the checks to clear off of.
yeah, I just wanted to explain that.
Okay.
Because it'd be nice if you could sit in there and just give money out, but I know what you're doing. Okay, thank
Very
you.
good. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Move to unfinished business. Presentation regarding Reading Country Club dining service.
We were expecting Chef Soul to be online with us.
He is on.
He's on now?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Where is he? I don't see him.
Down at the bottom there.
Okay. Keith, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, sir. This is Jeff Bartlett speaking here. The board and I have all received your report that you did on the Reading Country Club, and we were hoping tonight that if you could just kind of briefly go through, your report, how you came up with some of the information there, and then if any of the board has any questions, I have a couple questions I want to ask to kind of keep things going with this project. So you're on, and if you want to just introduce yourself a little bit and go through the process.
Sure, not a problem. I'm assuming everybody has at least one opportunity to read what I sent. It just comes in 2 parts. One part, my company just calls it the poetry, which basically speaks to the conversations I've had with you or your group. My last conversation with your group, including my last conversation with Jeff, really kind of helped us kind of steer things in a better direction, because my last conversation with Jeff was explaining that you guys are really trying to finish up some things and you're not that concerned about operating. You want to make sure what you have, what it's worth, what it can do, and I guess look for a possible vendor or management team or company to take over that space if you're not going to be the operators yourself. So that's what all my conversation in the actual poetry leads to. First page just tells a little bit about my company if you don't know. And the first thing we did was my group just really just took a hard look at why the actual club should be preserved. And I still stuck to that tenet only because I thought it was important to say what I thought, which is I think you guys have a great facility and the opportunity to operate, whether you operate it yourself or you're actually asking another company, a management team, management fee, cost plus, however you choose to do it, that I've represented in this document, the opportunities, some of the things I think need to happen, some of the things why they need to happen, and some of the things I need to be added to what you do. The actual club itself, we took some look at the local demographics, looked at why the club should be what it is and why the club should continue to operate, and more importantly, why the club can operate as a profitable entity and be a marker or a example of a great banquet clubhouse business in the region. You have all the things that make that possible. It's really a matter of management. In our actual presentation, we just talked about some of the reasons why the club is significant. The three things that we pulled out of there were pride, tradition, and hospitality. Those three things were brought up basically just by me sitting in a meeting and listening to what people had to say about the club itself. And that pride and that tradition part really shines through in what the club was, what the club is, what the club can be. But for it to actually do the numbers that it was built to do based on its square footage, total seating, everything outside of golf operations, the only thing that really needs to happen is that it actually has to have like a competent management presence that represents gracious hospitality. That hospitality piece, it's hard to see it in motion. I've only heard what it was. So all of our decisions about what we shared were all based on how many people can it seat, how much space does it have, and the opportunities to sell, meaning if it were to be marketed properly and it actually had like the proper event planning staff and the proper tech that is connected to having the event planning that should be a part of this type of business. Further in here, you see where I talk about destination dining, which is a very, very important piece. What we did was I took a look at the whole Mid-Atlantic region, got information from Deloitte, got information from the National Restaurant Association, as well as from Ben Fleckie from the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association, that all correlates to either clubs, banquet halls, banquet event rental space, and that's where we derived all of our numbers and much of the text that you see us talking about, why people choose destinations, why I focus most of our conversation and most of what's in here about weddings, because weddings really are a key driver to the event business. You have great restaurant space, you have great event space. Your event space, because of the magnitude, because of the location, because of all the other factors I talked about before, you have universal space, whether, again, if you guys chose to operate, bring in an operator, or totally lease it out to another company, you have what is considered prime A space, or if you were comparing it to office space, this would be like Class A office space of the banquet business. Some comparisons I gave in note were places like Normandy Farm or Shady Maple. I'll explain why I put Shady Maple in there. And I use an example in New Jersey, which really represents space that is super space, but does not have lodging. Now, you guys, even though you have the golf piece, which I really tried not to really factor too much of that in there, because you have prime space, that prime space means everything, and it doesn't just mean weddings. So even though you'll see a focus on my conversation talking about weddings, 50% of your event revenue, whether you guys are running it or someone else are running it, there's an old saying, like in my sophomore year at Cornell University, there were 21 opportunities to make money. 7 days a week, 3 meal periods a day. The average restaurant or banquet space really does not use that space or utilize it well, utilizing it only on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, leaving probably 2/3 of the opportunities to make money on the table. With proper marketing, and obviously with proper event sales team, every day of the week is sellable. Now, I come from environments where that happens. There are clients that I have where I see that happen on a regular basis. And because you have the space, the square footage, the parking, the location, and all those things for the wedding and social business and for the corporate side of business, you have what I consider a destination space that, because it's only 1 hour from Philadelphia, and when I looked at demographics around where your location is, there is opportunities for lodging with proper partnerships, that you have that kind of space that should be able to sell for all 21 opportunities with a sales team in place. Again, whether it's you guys or whether it's someone else that you bring in to do it, or someone that I help you find it should you choose to have any help with that. All this is driven by hospitality. It's about creating the show. It's about creating the kind of environment that is really a service-based environment. The destination piece is very big, but the service environment is what makes people decide if they want to use you, if they want to repeat, return, refer, and be a part of what is available at the Reading Country Club. Again, I'm still talking outside of the golfing piece. I've read some things about golfing. We got some great golf information from some really great authors. But what I thought was important just so you understand, I don't know if anyone really knew what the numbers or what the potential numbers are for your space, looking at them from a conservative standpoint. So besides the banquet business, you guys have your restaurant opportunity. You have the opportunities for bar, wine, spirits, and craft beer sales. Catering and events is something I've spoke about. Your conference capabilities are really off the charts. I decided, and even though we didn't elaborate much on this, that I saw space that was behind your, I guess I'd call it a halfway house or snack bar, that just seemed like it was totally underutilized. But because it rides in between, because when I look at the site plan, it rides in between your dining bar space and your snack bar, and there's just this whole area where there's a small locker room, but a huge office space that I think really should be like converted and reused in some sort of general store type opportunity. Because if you were going to have this destination space where people come for weddings, events, banquets, and obviously a robust restaurant business, the ability to have merchandise sales, online sales, and items that are connected to what I would call, the Reading Country Club country store, or call it whatever you want. I think it would be really foolish not to utilize some space or that space to be able to do some of those things. The actual branded products are things that are connected to the club, connected to the store, connected to the restaurant, connected to people's memories and events there, and merchandise that matches those same things should be a part of what it is, and that's that general store reference comes to. Direct consumer is a large piece. The only reason I talk about that a lot is because I personally, plus working with my son who's an executive for Amazon, direct consumer sales are such a huge part of businesses, especially when you see people pivot during this whole COVID period that has always been growing before COVID. It has gone off the charts during COVID, and it's not going anywhere because those online sales are a big piece. Everyone loves to stay connected to the brand where they've had a good experience. So your online store doesn't even have to have anybody walking in there unless you have actual events when people are spending the day at the campus. But the ability to go back online and remind them where to get things, where to get products, whether it's rubs, spices, sauces, T-shirts, golf club head covers, whatever, those abilities should be online. And these are opportunities to make money that should be part of your revenue centers that doesn't even exist, but it's very easy to set up. Even if you didn't do the actual store and use that room for inventory and just worked off photographs and a great online store on Amazon or another online merchandise platform. Part of the reason why you saw images for Shady Maple was two important things. The model for Shady Maple is quite possibly one of the best business models in the world, because what it does, it gives you the opportunity to be able to take a space where you may not be making a ton of money, and the way you guys have so much guest square footage outside of your ballrooms, which are upstairs. You have outdoor dining, you have semi-outdoor dining, you have a bar that has a ton of seating, and you have all this space, whether it's buffet or whether it's something where you're creating, again, that opportunity to go to a place to get an affordable meal, to be able to travel to a destination. And you have all of that space and all of the USPs, which I call unique selling properties, to be able to take a day of the week. If not, you don't have to use the whole week. You don't have to be Shady Maple. But part of your revenue, which I included in the financials, which we'll talk about in a minute, should be a part of how you put butts in seats. Because I know that people take buses to Shady Maple. You have the kitchen, you have the firepower, you have the hot battery, you have the square footage at 10 square feet per guest to easily put 300, 400, 500 meals through a Sunday brunch. Why wouldn't you do that? And I'm not talking about just people that are in the Exeter area. This has to do with smart marketing. It has to do with smart collateral. It has to do with smart messaging, web presence, and embracing the whole online experience. Like I said, you have the space, but it's just not being utilized properly. Back to the wedding piece of what's what. I'm not going to belabor too much about that, but weddings are just a huge, huge piece that is untapped. And because you've been closed for, I think it's been 18 months or 24 months, whatever it is, you've kind of fallen off the map. Some would say that's a disadvantage. When I talk to my marketing team, what they want to talk about is the fact that you are a brand new brand that happens to have this, that happens to have so much savoir-faire when it comes to, you have this traditional old look architecture inside, outside, and you have this beautiful stately look coming up from the road, that you do have the ability to push this wedding piece. Again, that's something that I think will be very attractive to any catering or event operator that you're looking at to come in to be a part of what you're doing at the country club. All those things have to be supported by online sales and great catering packages. You have to have a culinary team that makes sense. But again, any great management company that you bring in is going to bring some of those things. Everything is 100% connected to how you guys do your marketing based on a business that can do anywhere between $4 and $5 million a year. Your space can do that on the conservative side within the first 5 years. 1% of that gross revenue were to be spent on web development, management, and commission sales would take care of that, never taking away from what it is that your total revenue is. In my conclusions, before I get to the financials, I talked a little bit about the banquet industry itself. I'm not going to go back over that too much, but all the information that I got, again, comes from some pretty fat sources that we use, whether we're working with some of our actual stadium and arena clients who use their space for events other than concerts, ball games, and things like that, and all of our hotel clients as well. Does anybody have any questions so far before I get to financials? Okay. There's a financial sheet that I give you, which is really the nuts and bolts of what it is that we do when we do feasibility for restaurants. And again, there are different things that we could talk about in this, but I think the financials really kind of get to the gutty works of what it is that I saw as a challenge at the meeting that I attended, where I simply said, for you to make a decision about whether or not you are going to sell, buy, lease, do some combination thereof, you have to know what potential or what numbers the actual space can do. In the beginning of the sheet, and like what you're showing right here, my business model, these are all zeros in here because you guys are not purchasing this property. There is no capital budget, and those are things that you would have to talk about when it comes time to say, would we do this ourselves, or would another operator start to look at this and say, do we have to invest in HVAC? Do we have to redo the carpets? You know, whatever it is that we have to do, that will be in that opening P&L. So that capital budget part is empty. The first part I did was I decided to just break your restaurant sales space first in a total of 200 seats. Those 200 seats are represented by all of your bar seating, the what I call pre-function space in front of your restaurant, and then the space that you have that's out front. So you also have, so I calculated that as 200. If anyone has any questions about when you see these parts in my business model where it says table turns, things like that, if you go to right where it says covers, that basically just tells the table turns say what percentage of the 200 seats. That number where it says covers represents how many people would be in that meal period. So, for example, on a slow day, on a Monday, even though Mondays can sometimes get busy at a golf club, you're only doing 40 covers during that period. And again, the numbers coincide as you're going further down: breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the daily totals, the actual sales, right down to your Saturdays and Sundays. You see high numbers on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Based on what I'm talking about, we're still on the sales projection worksheet. Let's scroll back a little bit on the sales projection worksheet where I'm actually talking about Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, where you see I'm showing that you have 40% of your total dining room sat. There on Saturday, you can look at lunch where I see 80%. The reason why that 80% number in there is because I would assume that is a stronger day for golf, but it's also a stronger day for destination dining. And again, with your numbers increasing throughout dinner. Below that, you'll see special events. Special events number is important because what it does, it represents some numbers that are based on national averages on the average number of guests for a wedding, the average price, which the average price is actually for a wedding $215 if you look in some of the poetry that I sent before. But you notice I knocked that number down to 75. I didn't knock it down to 75 because the average wedding is $75 per person. I knocked it down because I have to make sure that this business model represents the things that you may do throughout the course of the week. You could have anyone like GlaxoSmithKline come in and have a sales and training meeting where they're just having a break for $10 a person and a lunch for another $55. That makes your 75. And it also means that if you have like an event that has less people, that has a lower guest count but a higher per person average, that's all factored into there. at the end of the day, when all these sales are combined, and we can look further into it when we get further, but the recap on the sales numbers do not lie. Where you see where it says 4.4 million in sales, that's a combination of your daily sales, your weekly sales, and your sales of events and catering and corporate business that you should do throughout the week. Based on the factors I talked about with things like marketing, who your sales team is, what you're doing online, and embracing all the things that are important to combine tech and sales and your property potential. Below that, you all see a number where it says annual sales per square foot. Good sales per square foot for a restaurant run around $150 to $180 per person. If you happen to have a banquet and meeting facility, those numbers should be upwards of 200 to 250. To give you a good example, I do know for a fact that almost all the Hilton hotels that I ran for years, those numbers had to stay at 225 or we were doing something wrong. So, and that number hasn't changed. All right, so I use that as an example because it happens to fit an industry example today. And because I'm only talking from a banquet side of things, you guys don't have a rooms division. You don't need a rooms division. The banquet numbers and the event numbers don't lie when it comes down to what your business should do, what it should show, and the percentages that go throughout the presentation that I have here. An example of the restaurant numbers, part of the reason why the numbers say what they do, if you look to the right in the Exeter Township sales projection worksheet, typical week, there are 3 important numbers that you will look at, and that's the next slide, where it goes into breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you'll see the numbers to the far right. It says what your actual check averages are, and these are based on me taking a look at, hey, what is breakfast going to cost? What does breakfast cost in Exeter? What does breakfast cost in Radnor? What does breakfast cost in Philly? These numbers where you see $13.50, this is just giving you an idea of like, hey, someone bought a breakfast entree for $8.50. They might have got a side of bacon. They might have got a non-alcoholic beverage. Their check average comes out to $13.50. Same thing with lunch, running around $17.05. Dinner topping out at $28.25. And you'll also be able to see that I put in the correct averages for the amount of people that would have a non-alcoholic drink, who's going to have a bottle of water, who's going to have 1 drink, who's going to have 2 drinks. Again, these are all based on restaurant averages from the National Restaurant Association. The other important piece I think that kind of comes through there is making some smart decisions about labor. Labor for restaurants, labor for catering facilities. It's always going to run, that's right, next slide, it's going to run somewhere in that 25%. The average restaurant or the average catering facility, excuse me, and I really try to keyhole all my clients into that space so that I know that our numbers make sense at the end of the day for my staff and for our team, and to make sure that we actually are doing something that's very important for a restaurant business, not to operate from a P&L base, but to operate being budget-based. I always tell people it's very important to have this kind of paperwork ahead of time, whether it's your new operators or yourself. Too many restaurant businesses run from a P&L-based business and are basically driving, looking out of their rearview mirror, which we all know does not work. But I think it's more important that everybody works off 12-week budgets with realistic percentages that say exactly what you need to do. My restaurants all run at 25%, between 23 and 25% labor. So looking at the actual sales, labor productivity ratio should be 19.1% per 100 covers. Everything here you can see, if you look at the bottom of each column, you'll see a percentage number. And this is how I double check. It's kind of like that redundancy piece to make sure that my numbers make sense. Can we really do this much sales? Well, how much labor does it take to do it? How much management does it take to do these things? And at the end of the day, looking at the totals at the bottom, labor cost per shift is all running where it's supposed to, and you'll see those numbers get a little lower as you get to the end of the week, and that's because you're doing higher volume with the same amount of staff doing the job. So where you're seeing yourself in these 26s and 20s, and you're seeing the numbers getting to the teens, in the high teens when you get to the end of the week, that's only because you're doing higher volume, you're doing repetitive jobs, same guys are cooking the same eggs, the same guys are flipping the same burgers, and that's how you save money. But it's also very important that these numbers make sense before we move on to our assumptions and everything that we look at. Okay, what are we doing year 1, year 2, year 5? Last page of those projections just talk about how I calculate the same thing for our catering. The same principles apply. It talks about exactly how we do those things, how we achieve those numbers, and with the final labor percentage again of 30.1, And that's only because we're going to have to, whoever decides to operate here is going to have to make a smart decision about the cost of service. You have to have one server per 20 guests, one captain per 50. They cost $35 an hour at a 5-hour minimum. So your labor costs are going to be a little bit higher here, but we also know that our sales team has a lot of flexibility to be able to decide, what are we charging? Do we have the $200 wedding person? Do we have a $100 wedding person? And that number is going to fluctuate, but it should never, ever go over 30%. I'm always giving you worst case scenarios when it comes to cost in my projections, so that when it comes time to decide how much money you're going to make or your next operator is going to make, these numbers are reliable. Our assumptions for operating projections go on to the next page. Really, this just gets into the nuts and bolts of what's what. You'll see something very important where it says cost of sales. And the cost of sales, these are numbers that I usually ride a little bit lower than national averages, because I'm a big fan of, if I can't bring back 20% in my food business, I shouldn't be in business. So in this particular case, you'll see your food cost percentages are 25. You'll see your liquors are at 20, 25, and 30. Those are based on averages for my businesses or my clients' businesses. But at the end of the day, total cost of sales, if we go to the far right, is still only 25%. If you come down to the next page, hourly labor costs, again, I'm running at 20. And one of the things that's important, the first thing I do when I look at restaurants, I'm looking at something called prime cost. Prime cost is the cost of goods sold plus the cost of labor divided by your total sales. And that needs to come out to be about 50% for this type of business. If it were just a standalone restaurant, 60 to 65 used to be an average that works well. Doesn't work for me and my clients if you're trying to take home 20% every day. All industry averages where it goes into things like employee benefits, direct operating expenses. You'll notice that one of the important numbers, before we get to that, management salaries, these are numbers I think are absolutely important to making your operation run. These are the actual positions that are definitely necessary, and I left $37,000 buffer per year because I think there's another manager that's going to need to be a part of how to make things happen. I think it's probably going to be a steward. Steward's necessary just because you have so many equipment, table, china, glass, and silver responsibilities that someone's going to have to manage on a regular basis, so you don't have high replacement costs for things getting lost, broken, or stolen. Everything, again, like I said, national averages, benefits, direct operating expenses. These are percentages that I just pull off my standard P&Ls. Some things are going to be a little different for your business, the efficiency of your HVAC, cost of water, I don't know, your gas costs. There's a lot of things that are unknowns, but if they're done the way they're supposed to be done, they're going to come close to national averages, and that's what this is based on. I threw some other numbers in here, but one important thing that you see is missing is occupancy costs, because I don't know what it costs to actually pay for the space, the taxes, or whatever associated. So there's no monthly number in there, and there's no annual number in there. You guys own the property or whatever costs are associated with that. I don't have numbers for depreciation and amortization without taking a valuation of the items that you have there. I know that you still have to get some equipment and bring certain parts up to date. When I spoke originally to your crew, I think I explained to you that you guys are 90% of the way there, and the biggest thing you have to do is take care of mechanical issues like HVAC, and you have to bring all of your china, glass, and silver up to date, whether it's a new operator or your company itself. That is not cheap, but it's a one-time thing that's going to obviously get rolled into your depreciation and amortization of furniture, equipment, china, glass, and silver. There's no conversation about financing, and it closes up by actually giving you what I see your monthly and annual averages are, and also in turn, what I think is very important, if you go past the annual operating projection, you see some 5-year operating projections, which are based on what I would do if I came in there as your new operator. If I came in as your new operator, one of the things that are important is that it takes a year to build a viable banquet and catering regional entity. So I think the thing that's important is that during that first year, you're going to have just your baseline sales. All right, but after year one, if we're doing what we're supposed to, if we're embracing our online strategy, we're doing the things that we're supposed to do, you'll notice that you see a 20% increase between year one and year two. Then after that, you see modest increases of 5% each year. That's pretty straight line math for how that should go. Those 5% could be higher numbers, but it takes a year. And that first year is usually a big jump because you've spent a bit, your whole marketing budget wasn't putting butts in seats. Your whole marketing budget was about awareness during that first year. It really doesn't really take off. even in places where I do stuff like I just did work at the Richmond Convention Center. When they first took on my approach, it took literally a year before they saw, but what they saw was great, was a 28% increase in sales. But it took a year of them spending money within what they were doing in the state of Virginia, right? And in Virginia, bringing in business and letting people know how and what they were doing with the changes at the Richmond Convention Center. This is no different. It doesn't matter if you're a convention center. It doesn't matter if you're a hotel. It doesn't matter if you're a hot dog stand. It takes time. It takes money. And when it's well spent, that's where those big increases come in that first year. And they're sustainable with incremental increases in the years to come. I'm ready for your questions, gentlemen. And ladies, I'm sorry.
The first question I have, Keith, is how does COVID factor into all of this?
Great question.
You read accounts that a lot of restaurants in trouble. I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. COVID is a huge factor. I just got done speaking to about like 70 operators in New York City on a big call to New York Hilton. And I always tell people this, based on everything I've learned in the last 8 months, 6 months. Everyone keeps talking about the new normal. It's not the new normal. It's the new now. And the new now says that when you hear, let's use Pennsylvania as an example. Pennsylvania went from our COVID response saying there is no indoor dining. And then it wavered from 50 to 25 to 0 to 25 to up to 50. And a ton of operators did not, they just threw in the towel. And here are the things that are important. One, people still have to eat. And there's a two-part answer. There's the first part. People still eat. So the restaurants that you speak of, they still have to meet people where they're at. Everyone didn't all of a sudden become great cooks. Everyone all of a sudden didn't decide that, hey, I'm going to start making all my own meals. Truth is, people kept on buying food, and they still do. I have a $400,000 account that's thriving because people are still eating. But it's how they've changed to meet people where they're at. Now, the event business, and this is half of the knot that has to be thought about for Reading, is that you have this restaurant opportunity that's wide open that can be a great revenue center in your region. And some of that is with dining, because you guys have the ability to really space people out, but I still don't see things changing for in-house dining until even more restrictions are lifted. For the banquet business, this is one of those places where I had a long talk with all the people on that group call where it's got to take close to a year before the banquet business changes. And one of the cool things is this. I guarantee every one of you sitting on the other side of this computer screen knows somebody or someone or has a family member that decided to postpone a wedding and gave you a new date or said it's for next year. And that's exactly where the banquet business is now, especially the wedding business, that everyone is banking on that happening. Now, do I have a crystal ball? No, I can't say that restrictions are going to be lifted, Washington's not going to implode, and the world is all going to be the way it was before March. What I can tell you is everyone is moving in that direction of, just in the event side of business, that we are postponing these things until things change. Now, one of the big things, whether you look at it from a Wall Street standpoint or you look at it from an operator standpoint, they all want to get back to these things. They desperately want to get back to them. Even when people know it's not safe, people are still crowding into places, hopping on planes, doing the things that they need to do, and some people aren't even caring about the restrictions. So the truth is, we just need a little bit of leadership. We know that we're going to get some good work from DC and from our local leaders and our government leaders and our state leaders, that the needle has to move. So in all of this, all I'm saying is the operators that are ready, the operators that have not thrown in the towel, the operators that are prepared and still operating at a reduced level, when things change, they are the first operators that are going to see that big boom, see that big increase, because they're not starting their train all over from zero. They're not trying to push that heavy stone from a stop. It's already been moving. I'm sorry I don't have like a very clear answer. That's the one thing that myself and every professional that talks about this is that if you are operating, you're going to do well as things change. If you're not operating, you're going to be left behind because those who are operating are going to continue to do well and take business from people that are just trying to get started.
Well, Keith, based on what you just said, whoever comes in to operate this is going to be starting from that dead stone.
That's correct.
And given everything going on out there, who do you feel is going to be interested in coming into a facility like this, given the environment out there and starting from scratch? Your numbers obviously are based on our seating capacity and things like that, which under current guidelines in Pennsylvania, we know is nowhere near that capacity.
Right.
You know, who's the person that we're going to be looking for, or the company that we're going to be looking for that's going to want to come into a facility like this?
Great question. I can already think of 3 companies in mind. 1 is Star Events, 2 is Sage Catering, 3 is probably a company like Peachtree and Ward. We're talking about companies that do nothing but these kind of venues. And those are, by the way, I just named 3 Philadelphia-based companies that have venues outside of Philly because they invest in these types of things because they have the clients to make it happen. The advantage that you do have that your space has that they don't, that most of their other venues don't have, is that your entire property, when I'm saying the footprint of that space, it means that they can operate a restaurant, which means that they can operate and have a profit center that is operating when the place normally would be dark like their other facilities, because their other facilities only represent sales for events when there's events going on. So what it does, and I've talked to 2 of the principals of 2 of those companies, they love that kind of stuff because they're like, listen, that means that like I'm keeping more people working when it's not a seasonal business because we have an outlet for all of our management and a good portion of our line employees that want to keep on working instead of only working on weekends. So those companies like that, and there are several out there, those are the type of operators that have the pockets to be able to make it happen and can see the advantage of looking ahead as opposed to, you know, the average caterer that's like hoping for a job a weekend. These guys are booked solid year round.
Another question. Do you have any specific issues or items that you feel we should definitely address in like a request for proposal? Something, you know, that's key to making sure that we attract the right operator?
You know, wow. When it comes to attracting an operator, if I was running it myself, my biggest thing would be like making sure that the mechanicals were just spit spot. HVAC, water, gas, electric, leak-free, everything dry. You know, the very important basics that cost a lot of money that can make you have to stop doing business. Those are the heavies. If you thought there was a hiccup in any of those areas, those are the things that would need to be done. Because the truth is, you also want to be able to talk to an operator and say, you're taking it as is. So as is to an operator, if they think that all of a sudden they've got to replace 40,000 tons of air conditioning, or they find out that they have to like do some huge plumbing job or something like that, that's an issue that could just become a serious point of contention between you, the owners, or the new operators, and new operators aren't even having it. And I'm sure their attorneys will be addressing that stuff before you even went to agreement, because those are the things that myself and I tell my clients all the time that those are the things that you have to worry about. If I have an event for 400 people and it's, you know, it's a $70,000 event and the HVAC stops, you know what? No one tells a good story, but they tell the bad story all the time. It can keep them from making money for months.
Hey Keith, this is John. Thanks for the presentation tonight. I have a question. You talked about some models, the cost plus or the lease option. Do you have any experience with, and even if you have it with other municipalities, do you have any examples of municipalities that have done both options with different vendors on the restaurant side? And if you don't have a municipal example, just in general, which model do you think is a better model for us? Because the previous history of this place, obviously, we had a very poor vendor, Viva, that we had to kick out. So we definitely don't want to go down that road of hiring a terrible company like Viva and a very poor owner. So what's your example there that you could
Right.
give us?
Okay, I don't know it from a municipal standpoint, but it doesn't matter. Cost plus or management fee, it doesn't matter. It really is based on the person who's writing the rules, which it's you guys, or at least you're going to write the first rules, and then whoever it is you're going to negotiate. But I really would base it on what you want to get out of it. I always tell people that business deals are always goal-based. So you guys really are just going to have to iron out your goals and say, what do we want out of this place? Do we want to get XYZ in rent or lease for this long period of time that is going to address these capital issues in our budget? Do we just want to have a great place and know that we happen to own it? Are you trying to create an opportunity? I mean, listen, there may be, I don't know if there's a culinary program in your county that maybe it's something where you say, hey, maybe there's a way that we get XYZ tax breaks and they have a top run facility because it's run by the greatest instructors in our region. I don't know, but I really think it's based on your goals of what you want to get out of it. Cost plus or management fee, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's about deciding what does Exeter Township want to get out of this relationship. So that, that's something where you guys would probably have to sit and think about what you want to get out of it, or at least say, listen, to cover our knot, we have to be here. So maybe that's a starting point in the conversation. We are losing this much money carrying this place. I don't want to pay this anymore. And then move the needle from there. That's me guessing, not trying to get in your business, but cost plus or management fee, that's all kind of rising and ebbing and flowing, deciding what you want it to be.
Thank you.
Hey Keith, this is Joe. Assuming that all the mechanicals are in order, as a matter of fact, the HVAC is going to be completely redone. Assuming that is all done, can you give us a ballpark or what you feel would be immediate things that need to be replaced or upgraded? I know you mentioned the dishes, cutlery, things like that. Other things
I'm sorry, Joe. I'm going to back off at China Glass and Silver. The China Glass and Silver depends on two things. A, let's just say Star Events came in. Well, Steven Starr is going to want his own plates, his own forks, his own knives, and all that crap. So would I want to invest in that as Exeter Township? My answer is no. I'm going to give you a perfectly running building, and you're going to figure out everything else for yourself. We're not in the business of China Glass and Silver. That will be my Exeter answer. If you had a smaller operator that came in and was willing to meet the numbers that you wanted, say, for example, I know that I want occupancy costs to run somewhere between 5.5% and 7.5%. So if I've got a $5 million property, do the math. That's what I want a year, which might come out to, I don't know, somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 a month that I would expect for that place. I'm not sure. I didn't do the math, but when you're looking at the projections that I've given you, and maybe it's the kind of thing where you say, listen, year one, there's a 5-year lease, and year one is based on half of these projections, and after that, I expect an operator to pay this. I wouldn't even play around with sliding scale or cost plus and all that kind of stuff. You guys should just get your money, and picking a fair price to say, listen, we know that we can count on this much for our space, and that's what it's going to be. And again, that's you guys taking a hard look at your internal financials, taking a look at what you or I can help you talk about what I think is a fair price to charge for this. But a property that's doing $5 million a year, I want to charge them somewhere between 5.5% and 8.5% rent. And I'd go on the low side the first year, and then they've got to pay the full rent the next 4 years, because it does take time to get it. That year one is critical.
So what do you think would be a fair price?
Just do the math. Just multiply 8% times $5 million. That will be your annual rent.
Once you build up to that full capacity.
Right. That's why I said year one. I would say, listen, year one, I'm going to charge a 4% rate, and this is what it's going to be. And no savvy operator is going to have an issue with that when you're saying, listen, we're not going to pay your bills, but here's what we'll do year one, and here's what it's going to be through year 5, and you have your options to renew after or whatever. There's a million ways that could be chopped up.
And Keith, just to go back, and understand the dishes and all that stuff, and again, assuming that all the mechanicals are functioning, do you see anything that we would need to do for, say, someone coming in that says, hey, I want this ready to go, that we would have to cover?
Maybe carpet. It's kind of like I tell people when you walk around your house, you know what needs to be fixed.
Mhm.
You need to take that walk and make a punch list. And I'm not talking about, hey, we're going to change all these light switches to dimmers and no. I'm not talking about that, but everything that's working needs to work. It has to work. All right. And the one thing that I think might be important where you guys could, a big one is making a decision about that dead space that I said looked like a bunch of office space.
Yep.
Just think about it. Just say we're going to clear it out or whatever. And the other piece I think is important, you really need to make sure that you have ridiculously good internet service throughout the building. Because if you're going to have this kind of meeting capabilities, that's going to be a very big sell to whatever operator comes in, because that means they know that they could sell anything, even at 10 outside, and you got boosters on the back of the building, so you have great internet everywhere.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
No.
All right, well, if that's it, thanks very much for the overview.
Thank you,
Oh,
Keith.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith.
Guys, if you have any questions going forward, I'm always available. Sorry about the big delay. I had a lot going on, but I will be a resource. I will help you. It's not like there's an extra bill. If you got a question, you guys can call me. I'll send you guys an invoice for the balance. I do appreciate the work.
Keith, I'll be following up with a few questions. I'll email you and we'll set up a time to talk, okay?
No problem.
Great, thank you.
All right, have a great day, guys.
You too.
All right, we'll move on. Second item under unfinished business, monthly golf report. I don't know, Joe or Jeff or wants to make comments.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just, a couple comments. One, it's actually, when you look at the revenue, I talked to Derek this morning, with what they have so far in the month of October. They've actually now exceeded the yearly revenue projections, which is pretty impressive considering you had 6 weeks of absolutely no revenue whatsoever. In fact, already have 1,167 rounds in the month of October. And if it rained up there this weekend like it did down here, I was in Virginia for the weekend. It was pretty bad. But profit is running, I believe it was $114,000 over expenses. So it's just been a very positive experience. And, we're talking about the food and beverage side. Can only imagine what else we could have done there with the number of people that have gone through.
Thanks, Joe.
The feedback I hear from golfers who don't play RCC regularly is they appreciate the new carts and they appreciate the fact that, the course isn't perfect, but they see the maintenance and improving, and particularly the greens, how nice the greens are. And that's a big thing for golfers.
To keep on watching the maintenance, obviously, into next year.
Yeah, and that's a good point, John. I mean, but yeah, that's well, two good points there. One, getting the new mowers that we've kept down on maintenance costs and hiring people. So, I mean, it is in good condition, but the carts, I think, have been critical. We're now doing many days. I hear 200 plus rounds a year, which we couldn't do in the past because, 10, 15 carts were always broken. So being able to turn that number of people around, and I think we're over 20,000 rounds or something for the year, being closed 6 weeks. I mean, it's something we couldn't have done without those carts. So I think that was a great investment to get us where we are.
I think the other thing is when we've replaced equipment like the green mower, that's added to the quality of the greens.
Yeah. Good. Any other comments? I mean, I think it's a great story this year. It was kind of scary not opening till mid-May, but pretty impressive, the numbers. Alrighty, move on. Monthly right to know report. Any general comments, Jeff, from your observation?
Just that the number, it was not extraordinary this month. We only have one new one that came in that has an extension on it because of the volume of materials that we're going to have to produce. I don't think it will probably take the 30-day extension because we're working through it. This only came in right at the end of the month. And if you notice down at the bottom, there's only one outstanding prior document that's still being worked on. This was quite an extensive amount of materials, and that's the only one that's still outstanding that's being worked on. So you can see the average days. We turned them around within 5 days. We turned them around, got them back out to people, and things are going pretty smooth right now.
Thanks, Jeff. So we closed a couple of those big ones. How do we deliver? Was that electronically delivered, like 4,000 pages of documents?
Yeah, we had to deliver electronic because some of them were so large. They had to be divided into sections and done electronically. But those real big ones, a 4,000-page document, I think went out in 3 or 4 sections of Word documents and PDF files. So.
Great, thanks. Any questions from anyone else?
No, I thought it was a reasonable, a lot of the requests seem to be very reasonable and a lot more realistic than some frivolous ones in the past.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are just standard right to know kind of items, nothing outrageous or anything.
Realistic right to know is how I'll dub them.
Great. All right, we'll move on. Unfinished business. Item number 4, consider approval of the service electric cable television agreement. Okay,
that's me again. My throat's wearing out here today. A little while ago, we put together a number of questions about the cable franchise agreement. And we posted it online on the website, and it was also posted out on social media to try and let the public know a little bit more information about the cable franchise agreement, what it is and what it is not. And I think that's the key thing. Many people out there really did not understand what this cable franchise agreement actually is, and there were some jumping to conclusions that that the township is actually contracting Service Electric to come into the township and to provide cable. That is not the case. This is actually deals with the right-of-way of the township roads by allowing a cable company to come in and use the township right-of-way. This is a standard throughout the entire country. This is done all over the place, that you provide the opportunity for these companies to come in, put their cabling in, and provide service to the residents. We do not prevent any legitimate cable company from coming into the township and putting in their cabling if they want to put their lines in. If there were 5 cable companies out there that all wanted to service the residents of Exeter Township, all 5 of them would be able to do that. It really comes down to, are they interested in doing it, and do they want to spend the money to put their cable into the ground? In some areas where it's all built up, an older neighborhood, and the cabling is underground, it becomes a very expensive item for a cable company to come in, put their cables in, either digging or directional boring, going underneath driveways, underneath roads, and then offering that cable service to the residents. We're not preventing that from happening. Anyone that wants to do that could come in here and do that. But reality is there are only a limited number of cable companies out there, and they're undergoing a lot of competition with DirecTV and other things out there. So it's very expensive for these people to come in and do this unless they really feel it's going to be worth their while to come in and offer that competition. We're not stopping the competition. That is a fallacy that a lot of people are saying that, well, I talked to Comcast and they told us that the township won't allow them in. That is not true at all. If they want to come in, they come in, they get their permits to go through the process, and then that company would have a cable franchise agreement. Currently, there's 2 agreements in the township. There's 2 cable companies. You have Service Electric Cable TV, and you also have Comcast. Comcast has a smaller footprint than Service Electric. They have an agreement. It's almost identical language that provides that they pay a percentage back to the township for the use of the right-of-ways for cable services only. This is not for internet services. There is no provision in this agreement. The federal government has not allowed that to happen. On the federal government side, cable was the business that was addressed years ago when these agreements were put in place. And they're very limited in what you can or cannot do and what you can or cannot get from a cable franchise agreement. The maximum is a 5% commission based on cable services only. It does not affect internet at all. We don't have a say in the speed of the internet, if it's good, if it's bad. The township has no say in that. The only part that the township has as part of this cable agreement is that there's certain minimums that the cable company has to provide. The minimum number of channels, minimum speeds for cable, not for internet. Those are the things that we have in the contract and we can govern. If we get a lot of complaints that the cable, it was out for 3 weeks and nobody notified us, those are the kind of things where the township can contact them, for a group effort and try and get them to get things straightened out. But we don't dictate how they run their business. We don't set their pricing. That's purely up to them as a business. If the residents want to get other cable companies in here, that's something that they're going to have to talk to the cable company and say, hey, are you interested in moving into our neighborhood? I have 50 neighbors that want to sign up to you. Do you want to expand your service? But that's purely a business decision on the part of the cable company, not the township. This cable agreement that we're looking at tonight, Service Electric Cable Agreement, it expired in 2018. Typical agreements are a minimum of 10 years. The cable companies like 15 to 20-year agreements. We, however, are looking at a 10-year agreement with Service Electric. I believe in 2021, or late in 21 or early 22, the agreement with Comcast is going to be expiring, and we'll be negotiating and going through the process with them. The same exact situation that we go through. As far as the existing agreement, yes, it did expire. However, Service Electric is honoring the contract. They have been paying their annual commissions based on the service, the cable service. We have been receiving the money. So it's not like this agreement not being signed prevented the money from being paid to the township. We have received that money. We just need to formalize this agreement and put this whole thing to bed. I put together a bunch of questions. Lori and I put them out there. We went back and forth based on some information that we received from people and asked them what kind of things do you do or don't you know about this cable agreement. And again, we didn't get a huge response from the things that was on our website. We had a handful of people that emailed me directly, and I was able to respond back to them directly and give them proper information. Some of the information that came out on social media was a little bit more bantering back and forth, and a lot of it was unfortunately misinformation regarding the cable companies. Some people used it as a platform to cheer for Service Electric, and others said, we hate Service Electric, we love Comcast, we hate Comcast, but it really wasn't solving anything by doing that, and no new questions came to the township. So with all that being said, we do have this agreement. This agreement was worked on in association with the Cohen Law Group. The township had contracted them to work with us and another a group of other municipalities in Berks County. This company is based out of Pittsburgh. They're well known and well versed in cable franchise agreements. It's one of their primary things that this law firm is known for. They went through all the details and negotiated this for the whole group of people, and it's their recommendation that we move ahead and approve this agreement. They are currently already starting on the agreement for Comcast, and they will also be doing periodic audits of the cable revenue out there that these companies are generating in the township to verify that they are paying us the proper commission. That's part of the arrangement that we've made with them. So at this point, unless the board has any other questions, it's my recommendation that the board make a motion to approve the cable franchise agreement between Exeter Township and Service Electric Cablevision for a period of 10 years effective today.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
Any further questions or discussion?
I just want to compliment the question and answers. I thought that was very informational.
Yeah, agreed. Very good. Cleared up a lot of stuff.
Yep, it did.
Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Long-term issue put to bed.
Very
Unfinished business. Item number 5, discussion on the funds for Kubota Tractor purchase for the Reading Country Club. We discussed this last meeting 2 weeks ago, and we approved this purchase, but Jen, we asked Jen to do a little research on how we can fund this and make it accountable to the business, but some flexibility in it. Jen, you have some comments?
I do. What we had said, we would purchase the tractor and we would figure out at this meeting how it was actually going to be funded. The capital purchases are actually budgeted in the golf fund, in the golf operations fund. We purchased the last greens mower, I believe it was, out of the equipment fund. So we're looking to see how we'd like to purchase this one, whether it comes out of the golf fund or the capital fund or some other method. I did reach out to our bank where we have a equipment leasing line of credit that we could utilize. The rate that they could offer to us is 3.99% currently. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to finance the tractor at this point, considering the cash that we do have available to buy the tractor outright. We did actually discuss potentially having this be purchased out of the equipment fund and then establishing an internal transfer over the next few years for the golf operations fund to pay the equipment fund back for this purchase and possibly for the prior purchase that we made, the greens mower, I believe it was. What this would do is it would the golf operations fund is a proprietary fund. It's not a governmental fund. So in order to see the actual profitability of that business, we really should be charging all items that are associated with the golf operations to that fund. So by paying for it out of the equipment fund, it kind of doesn't show the true profitability and the full picture. But what we could do is establish an internal transfer where the equipment fund would pay for it, and then over the next 5 years, the golf operations fund could reimburse the equipment fund. We would show the true profitability of the golf operations fund, and it would also provide better cash flow planning for the golf operations fund. So they wouldn't have these large $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 equipment purchases in particular years that we could say every year how much they would be budgeted to reimburse the equipment fund for the purchases they had made in the past couple of years.
And Jen, we could do that with the mower too, that we mistakenly took out of the equipment fund?
Yeah, we could go back
for that.
and
Okay.
We had done something similar. It was a slightly reverse process, but it was budgeted for some police radios and a police server a few years ago. And the way they kind of saved for the purchase of this large equipment was to put money from the general fund into a capital fund to pay for that purchase. This would be kind of reversing that and just paying for it out of the equipment fund, and then the golf operations fund could transfer the money back into the equipment fund to reimburse that.
Yeah, so yeah, the golf has to pay the equipment fund back. Yep, I'm fine with that.
Right, but it would provide them some streamlined cash flow.
Yeah. Question for you, Jen. I mean, you said 5 years, but I mean, there's some flexibility there? I guess I look at a regular business and if they buy a major piece of equipment that maybe has a lifespan, or even the sewer plant had a lifespan of 25 years on a pump, and you depreciate it over a certain period of time. I mean, can that be adjusted to 7 years, 8 years, depending on the type of equipment and the expected lifespan?
Yeah, this is just an internal transfer, so we could do whatever we choose with it. I don't think it would be dictated by, or have to be dictated by, depreciation schedules. Whatever we feel the course would be comfortable paying, I think, is what we should do.
You brought up that the police had saved money for different things from the general fund. Is that the same type thing that could be done then with the country club for future equipment purchases?
We could set aside a certain amount each year, and once these pieces of equipment, that a certain amount of money each year that comes out of the Golf Operations Fund, once these pieces of equipment are paid off, then that could just accumulate into future savings for a future piece of equipment.
Okay.
I'm in favor of it as well. I think if we can, we pay for the money. I'm not in favor of paying 4% when we're not earning anything near that on the money we have, and then allocating the cost to the country club or whichever department, however we would structure it.
Mm-hmm.
What if they do have? Do we still have the flexibility, instead of paying longer, pay it off if profits are significant? So let's just say, as an example, the Reading shows a profit this year of $200,000. Would we have the flexibility of clearing out that so-called internal debt?
We could. The only stipulation would be is if we set it up as a budgetary item, say that they were going to pay $10,000 a year back to the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to clear out, make a $25,000 payment, I'll call it. We would need board approval for that, because we can only make budgetary transfers between funds.
Okay. Thanks, Jen.
I thought
Michelle, what's that?
to fix it up and then get the new tractor next year, or am I mistaken?
We already bought the tractor.
Okay, this is one that we're ready.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, is that all you need, Jen?
Yeah, I think that's fine. What I'll do is work into the 2021 budget. We'll start this in 2021. I'm thinking at this point we can reevaluate at the end of the year to see how much cash the Golf Operations Fund has that they could contribute possibly this year. But I'll work some numbers into the 2021 and the future budgets after that.
Yeah, just make sure both pieces. Go ahead, Dave. I'll just make sure both pieces of equipment are in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had already laid out some numbers,
Budget.
5 years, and I think it'll work with the 5 years. But like I said, we can look at that once we look at the country club budget.
Yeah, because even for this year, I mean, you already have a line item budget in there for something that you.
We do.
Right.
We do, yeah. So we could make an entry, start it this year at the end of December, and see where the numbers roll out. I don't want to take money that the course might need throughout the winter. So.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Good. Alrighty, let's move to new business. Discussion of refinancing alternative and process timeline for that. Is Jamie with us?
Yep, give me 1 second.
Okay. I'm going to put myself on video and hopefully I'm off mute. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. I guess Lori or Jen, I'm not sure if you had the ability to put my presentation up. I know the board has seen it, but maybe it's helpful if it's available on the screen.
Yep, Lori's going to do that for you, Jamie.
Oh, great. Thank you. Well, first off, before I get started, I was not available at your last meeting, and I wanted to thank the board for allowing us to work for the township. I think we have a great plan here to assist the township with the refinancing and the overall plan to reduce the interest expense over the coming years. Given all the things that are going on with the township and also the interest rate environment, I think we're going to take advantage of everything we can to reduce the cost to the township taxpayers over the next decade or so. If you want to turn to the next page. Thank you. There you go. I know it's not easy to read that in the screen, but just as a backdrop, as we all know, we're in a very unique time, both on an economic standpoint, but also just from our day-to-day activities. Well, the economic standpoint has actually benefited many of my clients over the last 6 months or so due to the fact that interest rates have been at near historic lows. Obviously, that's driven the ability to do refinancings, and we've found clients being able to save millions of dollars over the course of time, depending on how much money you've borrowed. Interest rates, depending on how far you go out, range in the 2% range, even if you go out 25, 30 years. It is just something that you weren't expecting at all. And as it turns out, the township has some opportunities to take advantage of that because the bond issues that are outstanding have the ability to prepay them without penalty over the next coming months. One of the main reasons why we're here to talk tonight is to hopefully take advantage of those interest rates and, more importantly, structure your debt to make things from a budgetary standpoint a little bit easier to budget over the next 20, 25 years, depending on how long we amortize the debt. Because the township has taken on the sale of the sewer system, it has actually paid down a significant portion of its outstanding debt, obviously related to the sewer, among other things. What that's done is impacted its overall debt service and made about 7 years from now a unique proposition where you have a large payment coming. So our thought here was to refinance your existing debt utilizing a multiple step process and then amortize it over a period of time that allows for a level payment, mostly to cover the revenues that you generate from your debt service tax. I think that's the most important key here is the township generates approximately $750,000 per year from that debt service tax. So our goal would be to structure the new debt going forward to keep within those boundaries. And I think we can do that utilizing either the use of cash or structuring the payments over a longer period of time. So tonight I'm going to talk about 3 different alternatives and help guide you in a decision which would make most sense to you as a township. And I know you have plenty of things that you've been thinking about from a capital side. So obviously those are the things you want to keep in the back of your mind when making any determination. I'm going to skip over to column 6, number 6 on this page. How would we consider doing this? Well, number one, we have to do this as a multiple step financing because there are essentially 3 different transactions that we're going to refinance over the next 6 months or so, one being the 2015 bonds, one being the 2016 issue, and the 2018 issue. There's also a couple taxable things that we have to consider, and that's because your bond counsel would be involved with this when we determine how we would structure this debt. So overall, step 1, we would refinance the 2015A issue, and we wait a few months and then refinance a second issue, which is the 2018 issue. So ultimately, we'd be doing 2 transactions essentially within the next 3 months. The reason we do that is ultimately it saves you some money. Despite the fact you're issuing multiple bond issues, doing this over multiple step financing provides lower interest rates over the course of time. I've shown 3 different scenarios to the administration. Obviously, you have some versions of this that we're going to review tonight. Scenario 1 would just be a traditional refinancing of this existing debt without using any use of cash. Again, the key here is we want to refinance the debt to make your overall payments be approximately $750,000 annually for as long as it takes to amortize the debt. Scenario 2 would be to also refinance the debt, keeping the payments at $750,000 per year, but using some additional cash to reduce the final maturity of this debt. In this case, based on our assumptions, you'd need approximately $2.3 million of cash to keep your overall payments to mature in 2039. And then scenario 3 would use $1 million of cash to reduce the payments as well as refinance the existing debt. And that would keep your payments a little bit longer than you currently are paying, but a little bit shorter than not using any cash at all. And we're going to talk about the impacts of each one of those from an overall debt service side. Obviously, the use of cash is a very interesting concept in this market. I know Mr. Staub mentioned right now our cash isn't using doing much for us right now because interest rates are so low. So as an example, if you make an assumption that the township would generate, the 5-year U.S. Treasury as a proxy, that's about 0.25%. So obviously, when you're talking about debt and amortizing over a long period of time, you're going to pay somewhere in the 2% range. So obviously, there's a mathematical calculation that there's a benefit to potentially using cash to reduce your overall debt service because the value of the money over the course of time may be far lower if you are, investing it versus reducing debt service. That's the key with all these decisions is what do you think your investment alternatives would be? I don't think interest rates are going to be at these historical lows forever, certainly, but it's just an idea of how we want to consider our use of cash. And obviously, how long we want to keep our debt service tax and how long we want that to go on for. Obviously, the taxpayers are going to have that. If you wanted to go out, to 2044, or do you want to go to 2039, or somewhere in between? Those are the questions that we can have as supervisors. I'll stop for a second if anyone has any questions, at least on the initial concepts here. Ultimately, the idea here is we're going to save some money by reducing the interest expense, and then restructure your payments to make them level. And in the end, depending on how much cash we may or may not use, it really determines what the final maturity of your future debt will be.
Hey, Jamie, just a couple of, since we have to do it in the step process.
Yep.
Is there a material disadvantage if we, let's just say that the market goes kaflooey, rates go up significantly, it doesn't meet the requirements we need, or, for the savings, if we're at step 1, but we can't do step 2 or 3?
Yeah, so
does that bring risk into it for us?
We're going to do this really quickly, even though it's 2 steps. We're at a point right now where, because of the timing that it takes to go through the process to issue bonds, we're going to go through the credit rating process first. We're going to do all the necessary legal side, but we're going to approve 2 transactions at one time to give us flexibility to get to market as quickly as possible. The rationale for doing the 2 transactions really is we can do this as a bank qualified issue. And just think about it, when you have a jumbo mortgage versus a traditional mortgage. When you have a jumbo mortgage, you pay a little bit higher interest rates because there's different type of investors in this sense. Well, with the bond market, there's bank qualified, which it means there's a larger investor universe, and there's non-bank qualified, which means there's a little bit less investor universe. Bank qualified debt, generally speaking, gets you about 15 to 20 basis points better interest rates, number 1. And 2, it gives you more flexibility to potentially refinance in the future. So going back to the question about risk, yes, we'll probably be waiting, a month or so before we go back to market again. But because of the timing it takes to go through the process, we're going to do a significant amount of work to get us to be able to price sometime in the end of middle of November to do step 1, and we'll probably end up doing the second step, a month or so later. So overall, when we think about doing issuances, we like doing transactions in January because traditionally interest rates are usually a little lower in January. So we think we'll take advantage of the first one being bank qualified, the second one being bank qualified, and more importantly, we have that January issuance date. So I feel okay about doing this in 2 separate steps because just looking at the history of how, the overall interest rate environment is on this particular time. More importantly, I don't think the economy is going to get dramatically better over the next few months. We just have a number of things that are going to happen that will probably keep the market in a reasonably good place, and locking in 2 steps, I think will be okay for us.
Thank you.
Hope that answers your question.
Yep.
Great. I'm going to turn to the next page. This will take a snapshot of the interest rate environment right now. And if you want to just go to the bottom part of these 3 separate charts, I think it's pretty significant to show you. Sorry, I apologize. There you go. Each one of these charts shows a little bit different things. I think the bottom chart signifies the most recent historical trends of interest rates going back to January of 2019. Obviously, you can see going back to March when we all went home for quarantine, that's when the market was in a place where investors just disappeared. Over the last 6 months or so, we've just found that investors have been very interested in general obligation tax-free instruments. of Pennsylvania and nationally, and rates have just remained at just significantly low levels, and that's been maintained for a number of months. We obviously over the next few weeks we have something significant occurring. When there's an election, it doesn't matter when that election occurs. There's always a little bit of uncertainty. So we'll probably see interest rates bump around a little bit over the next few weeks, and we're not going to be ready to go to market prior to the election. But we believe when we're ready, which will be sometime around right before Thanksgiving or just after Thanksgiving, hopefully things will be stabilized and we'll be getting to market. Obviously, decisions that we're going to make tonight will help us plan for the process to get us to market. But ultimately, we're going to move as quickly as possible, get your credit rating established, and we hope we get a very strong credit rating, which give us very good interest rates. But as you can see, we've been in a really good place for the last 6 months, and I don't think things are going to change dramatically over the next few weeks. Let me turn to the next page. So this is really what we're talking about here. This is your debt portfolio. This is what the township has outstanding as of today. It's very interesting that there's a number of items that we can really hit over the next few months. And it's just from the fact that the debt initially was done as bank qualified. So much of these transactions had 5-year call provisions, and that's going to work out quite well for the township because we're going to be able to get it to market at a point in time where interest rates are at a very good place. The two issuances that we're going to eventually talk about are the 2015A issue, which has a call provision on February 1st, 2021, but because of the ability to do what is called a current refunding, we can settle this calendar year. The balance of that debt is a little over $5 million, and the payments are shown in column 3. We're also then going to consider doing a transaction that would refinance the 2018 issue, which is a taxable instrument right now, but your tax bond counsel, Mark Stein, is going to allow us to do that as a tax-free instrument with our second step. And then we're going to consider looking at your 2015 issue over the next coming months, potentially as a renegotiation with the current bank. And then eventually, sometime in May, we'll look into the 2016 issue. So again, a lot's going to happen over the next few months. The key here is step 1 and step 2, we're going to plan for payments of approximately $750,000. Everything else done after that will be just gravy for the township. Anyone have any questions on this page? I think it's important to point out, if you look at column 6, I mentioned that payment that has a large chunk in 2027. That's about approximately a $3.3 million issue. That's the goal here. We're going to be able to refinance that portion of principal and amortize that over a period of time to a structure the payment where your payments are going to be approximately $750,000 for however long we amortize this for. That's the most important part of this conversation.
Well, 25 and 26 are issues too, Jamie.
Yeah, that's true too, and we're gonna clean those up as well. But the big ugly one is definitely the $3.3 million.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I would also point out, much of your debt has interest rates ranging between 1.5% and almost 4 to 6%, depending on the tax-free status or the taxable status. So when we're talking about interest rates today, I think we're going to come somewhere from a tax-free standpoint in the low 2s. So there's obviously going to be interest savings just from the fact that the market is quite low. We will have to maintain a taxable piece, the 2015 issue, but again, we're going to be able to refinance the balance of the tax-free. So that's of course very important for the township as well. So let's talk about the nuts and bolts here of how this will look. And I know there's a number of pages that are going to have a lot of different colors in them, but I'll just describe what we're going to try to do here. So if you turn to page 4, this would be scenario number 1. The main difference between each one of these scenarios is simply put, if the township would put some of its reserves, some of the balances it has, related to the sale of the sewer system or others, to reduce principal amount of the future issue. This particular cash would have to be used with step 1, the blue section. And that's just mostly from the fact that this is how we have to structure this debt. It has to be done with the first step. This particular alternative does not contemplate using any major cash to reducing principal amounts. So in this particular scenario, as I've mentioned, the goal would be to reduce the overall debt service and straighten out the payments over the coming next 5 to 7 years. That orange section all the way to the right, which is column 17, this is a snapshot of an estimate of what I think your payments would be after it's all said and done. Understand that the blue and the red are what we're going to contemplate first. Those are what we're going to ask the board to consider with a future ordinance. The green and the purple is going to be a future transaction, whether it's a bank loan renegotiation or a future refinancing. Those are just the gravy I keep talking about. So when you see the orange columns being somewhere between 700 and 730, that's some estimates based on what I think will happen with this other transactions. Step 1 and step 2 will get us to that $750,000 per year based on this assumption. The most important side here is if you look at the final maturity, because of those large payments over the next 5 to 7 years, we're going to have to amortize the debt through 2044, which does extend out your current maturity. I should point out that is shorter than what the original debt of the township was contemplated back in 2005 when the Reading Country Club debt was originally taken out, but it is longer than the current amortization. There's just nothing we can do about it, just to maintain your $750,000 per year. What's most important though is because of this structuring, you will save money from a present value standpoint. Just like I mentioned, interest rates are lower than they were with the existing debt. So we will believe we'll save $600,000 or so of present value savings. That essentially means the value today of the savings over the course of time is based on a discounted factor. Understand when you stretch out debt, you do pay more interest over time. But that's the only way we'll be able to amortize this debt to keep your payments at a level standpoint of $750,000. I'll stop for a second. I know there's a lot here, but I think the blue and the red is the key when you're looking at these particular steps. It'll take 2 different transactions to kind of do those structurings to be able to do this tax-free and in a relatively quick manner. Okay. Let's just turn to the next page. Again, very similar color scheme here with the same concept. This is I would call the most you'd consider as far as the amount of cash utilized. The arbitrary concept here was to keep your payments and maturity within the same term as the current debt. So from our structuring standpoint, we're doing the same thing. We're refinancing the 2015A and 2018 issue, both tax-free. The difference here is we would ask the township to put in somewhere around $2.3 million of essentially upfront cash to reduce the principal balance of the new issuance. So instead of being a $5 million issue with step 1, it would be about a $2.8 million issue. Obviously, you'd save on a significant amount of interest expense because your debt would be much shorter. Your interest rate overall would also be lower because it's a shorter period of time. So as I mentioned earlier, you'd have somewhere around maybe a 2.2% interest rate on your future debt. This may drop it to maybe 1.9% because it's a shorter amortization. Overall, you save a little bit more money from a present value standpoint, but obviously, you have more cash coming out of your pocket. 0 versus $2.4 million. So again, it's a policy question. Does the board want to have your debt end quicker, i.e. removing that debt service tax 5 years sooner, or do you want to hold on to the cash for other things over the course of time? That's the question that the board can consider. And I'll turn to the last page just to cover the other alternative. So this particular scenario is really just splitting the baby. That's the best way to say it. Instead of using that max amount to keep your payments to 2039 going forward, this would shorten up your debt a little bit more. We picked an arbitrary $1 million. So instead of the final maturity with that scenario 1 being 2044, here we'd be able to shorten that to somewhere maybe into 2042, maybe 2041, depending on the interest rates. But overall, you can see that there's some additional savings versus the scenario 1, and you also have more cash in your pocket. Again, 3 different alternatives. I can see an argument for each one of them. Obviously, you know what you're thinking about from a planning standpoint. Again, the use of cash can certainly help in the near future because of the value of your cash is certainly not making much for you. And then again, the question of how long do you want to have the debt service tax outstanding for is really the main question. If I was sitting in your shoes, so I'll stop for a second to talk about this. If you have any additional questions.
Jamie, one item, if you could point out on the any one of these three scenarios, at the very bottom with the black dotted line showing the huge balloon payments. If you could just touch upon that, part of this smoothing that we're looking to do. If you could just explain that that particular issue, I think it would really send it home why we're doing this to take care of this, so we're not stuck with that big payment.
Yeah. The bottom line is there is an existing loan outstanding that was taken out in 2018. Again, I was not part of the transaction, but I believe at the time the plan was eventually the township would consider doing something with that, whether it's a refinancing or pay down of principal in the future. That particular issuance, that was the goal for it. It solved a problem, an issue, and now is a great time to consider getting rid of that problem. Mostly because of the interest rate environment we're in, and two, you have the ability to make decisions at this point given the amount of cash that you have outstanding. So, should the township do nothing, that black column on column 7 on all these different pages is what the debt would be, and at that time, the board would have to make some kind of decision on how it's going to handle those payments in 2025 through 2027. Because the debt is currently outstanding and it's callable and interest rates are near historic lows, this is the perfect time to take advantage and take care of that question.
Thank you.
Jamie, and also too, I think if you go to column 17 and just take a look at what the total, and it's hard for these old eyes to see it now, but what the total debt service would be with the scenarios. Not only are you smoothing it out, but your total debt's going down.
Oh, definitely significant.
I mean, that's important.
It's very important. Again, you obviously took care of a significant amount of principal with the sale of the sewer system, but now you're going to be able to reduce some of that principal depending on the amount of cash you use. And obviously, like anything else, when you amortize a certain outstanding balance, you pay more interest over the course of time. Mm-hmm. So, the more cash you put in, the less interest you're going to pay over that period of time. And of course, the shorter the debt, the less interest you're going to pay over time. It's an affordability question. From my perspective, we're going to be able to solve the budget issue. That $750,000 or so bogey, we're going to get there. It's just a question of when you want it to end, and that's all it comes down to. In either one of these cases, you can legally do it for as long as you want, and you just have a question of how much interest expense do you want to pay over those years. It's obviously with using no cash, I'm just going back, you'd pay approximately $18.4 million, give or take. If you used $2.3 million of cash, it drops to about $15 million of total principal and interest. And if you used $1 million, it'd be about 16.7. So you can see there's a difference between the amount of cash being used. And obviously, when we did our analysis, you have to assume that you're going to make some kind of investment. In our analysis, if you invested it at the current U.S. Treasury, the 5-year U.S. Treasury, you're going to earn over the course of time, $160,000. It's not significant because interest rates are so low.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about timing for a second, and that's what's on the next page. And we can go back to the other things we're going to discuss. And I know there's a lot here, but we want to move efficiently here. And I would point out, that the finance team that's in place, Mark Stein and Jen and Jeff have been meeting via phone call for the last few weeks, and we've developed this plan. I think the administration's comfortable with whatever concept the board chooses, but understand there's multiple steps that are going to happen for us to meet the timing here, based on just the fact that there's just a lot going on. So step one, which is the blue section, obviously, I think tonight we'd like you to determine the use of cash. Secondarily, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes, we're going to determine who the other member of the team is. We went through a process to bid out an underwriting service, meaning I'll call it a bank, to help sell your bonds for you. I'll talk about that in the next couple minutes. And then we're going to go through the rating process. I think considering all the things that have changed over the last few years of the township, we're going to make a very, very good argument to the rating agency to try to get the township upgraded. We have a plan here, and we'll put together a very formal presentation to the rating agency, and again, hopefully keep our fingers crossed that we'll get an upgrade. From there, we're going to ask to come back to the board on November 9th and ask you to consider an ordinance that would essentially establish the multiple step process, the financing that occurs this year and the financing that will occur next year, and lock in the bond underwriter. And then we finish up the rating process and ultimately price bonds sometime between mid and end of November, sometime around Thanksgiving. That would allow us to settle on the bonds before the end of the year, which is key to keep with the timing of that bank qualification side of things to get us the lowest interest rates. You'll see on the red section, I won't go into too much detail, but understand we're going to be doing some other things from the step one to kind of get us ready for step two. And that step two would be getting that second transaction that occurs sometime in February, and then mid-end of January. And then also we're going to ask to consider a renegotiation of a bank loan, literally go back to a bank and reduce the interest rate on the existing loan. So that'll be one of those other sections. All this together would get us to the point where we'd be in that $720,000 to $750,000 of total payments. So again, you're going to see me a lot, I should point out. So I know there's a lot here, but there's a significant amount of debt we're going to take care of.
So Jamie, the impact of the sewer plant sale should be beneficial to help our credit rating, obviously. Is that part of your plan?
Yes, definitely. We have an ability to we have a credit calculator that PFM has on its own that we utilize. The quantitative calculations that the rating agencies look at. We've utilized our program and determined we think we're gonna see some positive trends. Obviously, we're in a unique situation with COVID, but it's not hard to see that cash is king here, and obviously the debt burden has been reduced. So a very strong argument given what the current economic picture is for the township.
Thanks.
Jamie, with the current debt service, say it's in that 750 range, and it keeps the debt service in, say, that 6 to 7% range of our budget. Is that, as you go around with the other municipalities, where does that stand? Is that in line, high, low?
It's in line. Yeah, it's in line. I should also point out, when the rating agencies look at your credit profile, it's not just the township's debt profile. They're also consider the operating side of things. So the county, the school district, and your liabilities such as pension are also considered. So obviously you guys are maintaining your own house, but they do look at other things as well. And but yes, I think you're in a good position. It's not saying you're low, but you're in a good position.
Thank you.
Sure.
Does this decision we make between the three scenarios affect the credit at all?
I don't think the significance of the amount of cash that we're utilizing in either one of these scenarios will impact your rating dramatically. I think you all fall within range. You have a significant amount of reserves. Your debt profile would drop a little bit if you use a little bit more cash as far as the amount outstanding, but it's nominal enough that I think it would change your rating one way or the other, depending on which one you use.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. While you're considering this, and I know I'm hitting you with one last thing, I mentioned earlier that we did go through a process to look into a potential bond underwriter. I wanted to point out that we went to 4 different underwriting shops that do, these type of transactions throughout Pennsylvania, all strong firms. Through the course of that process and the evaluation, we determined that we're suggesting and recommending that PNC Capital Markets be the underwriter of choice for the township. They provided us a strong, proposal based on their estimated interest rates, their cost associated with it, and of course their experience in this market. So I only want to point that out, that we've done that process already, and that's our recommendation, that you'll see their name in a future board meeting.
Thanks. Well, I'd ask, Jen or Jeff, you've been going through these numbers probably more than we have. And certainly you know what we have on hand and future budgets look like. Do you have a recommendation here on use of cash and underwriter, or either one?
I think for the underwriter, Jamie, you said we're basically down to one option, correct?
That's correct, PNC.
Okay.
So that's a non-decision, Dave. Of the 3 scenarios, it's really, like Jamie had said, to me, the comfortableness of the board. We have the cash. We would need to come out of the wastewater treatment sale proceeds fund to do the $1 million or the $2 million. It makes economic sense to do it. If we use cash, it does reduce the maturity of the debt service payments. So that in essence would reduce the longevity of the debt service tax. So, but it's really up to the comfortability of the board of what they prefer, utilizing the cash on hand or just keeping the payments extended a little bit.
Hey, Dave, I'm just going to jump in. I think when you look at these options, we have money sitting in hand, and we're not just looking to spending money. All we're doing is paying down our debt. So
Yeah.
we're bettering our position. We're paying higher interest rates on the current bonds. We have the opportunity to lower them. We have an opportunity to flatten out the payments, especially in 25 through 27. And if we would utilize the 2.5 or whatever that number would be, we're reducing our total outstanding debt as well.
Yeah.
We're not coming near earning the money on that as an investment as we would as how much we're spending on it. So to me, it makes better sense. I think it's better for the residents. We have less debt. We flattened it, and I don't think we're putting ourselves in jeopardy taking our reserves from 40 to 38 or something $1 million. And you have those numbers better than I do, but in looking at these and doing these in the past, that would be the approach I would prefer. I think all 3 of them make sense, but it's similar to refinancing your mortgage. Do you want to cut your payment or have a little bit higher payment, or go to 15 years or stretch it out and go 30 and you pay more? So
Yeah.
I agree.
I would prefer not to stretch it out for the residents.
I agree with Joe.
I agree with that also.
It just
Yeah, I
makes
think
sense to, it's the same discussion of the tractor. Why would we pay additional money when we don't have to?
Yeah.
Yeah, part of the reason of selling the sewer plant was to help with the debt and of the past. So I think, as Joe said, one of the reasons that we did want to do, besides the debt that we already paid off, was to, pay down more debt. So I think the option 2 of the 2.5 million from the sewer plant fund sale makes the most sense, and it's what we told the residents last year.
Okay. Sounds good. Look like the Joes have it.
Well, great.
We need a motion for that, Jeff?
For me personally, I just need a nod. It sounds like I got some nods here. But certainly you're going to be doing an ordinance at the meeting on November 9th. That's going to really signify the potential future, borrowings that we're going to do. But certainly I'll leave it to you if you want to make this more of a locked-in concept.
Any thoughts, Liz? We just wait for the resolution or the ordinance?
Yeah, it's okay for you to just wait for the ordinance. Tonight you gave direction to Jamie, which is fine. You don't need a motion.
Okay.
Thank you for your work, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you. This
Yeah,
is
good
this is
presentation,
a
Jamie, and thanks for all the work behind it. And I thought it was very straightforward and very good to read. And great job.
Thank you. Well, we'll look forward to
Yep.
seeing you guys over the next couple of weeks, and lot to happen over the next 6 months or so. But we're going to hopefully save a lot of money.
Great, thank you.
Thanks,
Have a good
Jamie,
night,
and
everybody.
Jen and Jeff as well.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Bye bye.
There were nice 3 options to have, all positive.
Mhm. Sure.
Okay, new business, item number 2, adopt resolution authorizing payments to the 3 pension plans. I think this is a minimum municipal obligation for those plans. Jeff or Jen?
This is actually slightly different than the MMO. We did the MMO a meeting or two ago. The MMO is for the future year. This is actually the 2020 payments into the plans, which was established by the MMO that was approved last September. So this is just authorizing payments into the 3 pension plans. We received the state aid funding 2-ish weeks ago that supports these payments.
Thanks, Jen.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the payment of the 3 pension plans: police pension plan for $498,068, employee non-union pension plan $106,232, and employee union pension plan $81,000.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, everyone. Item number 3, consider resolution approving and authorizing execution of development agreement with financial security, any financial security agreement for the final land development plan for 35 West 47th Street, known as Mama's Pizza.
Yes, so this is the land development plan for Mama's Pizza, which is located on West 47th and Oak Parkway. The plan had a final approval back in, I believe it was February, and the owner is now looking to build, and 2 outstanding items were the financial security agreement as well as the development agreement. Township staff are looking for approval, authorizing signatures for the 2 agreements.
Thanks, Will. One motion for both, can include both?
Yes, please. I believe that's the way the resolution is written.
That's correct.
I'll make a motion for approving the resolution and authorizing the execution of the development agreement and the financial security agreement for this plan.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions?
The only discussion I have, I'm still going to state my concerns about the traffic situation there. That's all.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm opposed because of that.
Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Item number 4, under new business, consider the approval for the release of the escrow funds for BT Exeter LLC.
I can explain this project. This is the parcel that's next to Sheets that was developed into a retail area. The developer had to post an escrow of $107,094.78 for completion of the improvements, including the parking area, landscaping, curbing, and related site work. All the work was been observed and inspected by our office, including the landscaping. Everything appears to be in compliance with the approved land development. The applicant is seeking to close out the escrow account or letter of credit for the total amount of $107,094.78. And this evening there is the legal documents that the solicitor prepared as well for the execution and the closeout of the financial posting of the escrow for Exeter Retail. We're looking for a motion this evening to pay out that or to end the letter of credit for Exeter Retail.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
That was you, Greg?
Yep.
Yep. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, Joe. Item number 5, authorize the advertisement of public meetings for November and December. Laurie or Jeff, I know you've been doing a lot of research on that, and I saw some new stuff in the past week. I don't know if you want to review that.
Lori, you want to jump in? Just discuss your memo to the board?
Sure. Just wanted to provide some information on where we're at with the ability to hold in-person meetings. To sum up what was kind of a lengthy memo into a couple sentences, I'll just say that not a whole lot has changed, except for just a few days ago, the Wolf administration and the Department of Health released some new guidance that made another change to restrictions on indoor gatherings. And it did clarify that it applies to school board meetings and local government. So our meetings would obviously need to be in compliance with those regulations. And they're really based on building capacity and fire code. So based on our township meeting room, we would only be able to accommodate under the restrictions 9 people in person at a time. And that's just bodies in the building. It would still be all of the other building safety codes would need to be followed with the sanitizing and the masking and the 6 feet physical distancing. So that was just the information that we wanted to provide to you so that you could make a decision as to whether you're going to consider continuing virtual meetings, if you wanted to discuss in-person meetings. Just not a whole lot has changed. It hasn't gotten any easier to be in person, and with flu season coming, I don't know, based on the guidance that's out there right now, that it's likely to get any easier anytime soon. So that's kind of the research in a nutshell, but certainly if you have questions, I can do my best to answer them.
Thanks, Laurie.
I do know the school district's going to be doing an auditorium tomorrow in person, Lori, just at that feedback.
Okay, yeah, I had heard they had some trouble at a prior meeting.
With tickets, they're keeping people in the cafeteria. It seems like a very interesting process. Well, the people be in the cafeteria, they're allowed to come in and speak, but they have the limit as well, as you said, the 25%.
Yeah.
John, are they doing virtual in addition?
Yeah, they're doing YouTube and the meeting in the auditorium. That's what the newspaper said.
What was their capacity? You don't know.
Well, the auditorium's a lot bigger now, so that allows more people. I don't know. Joe might know how many people are in the auditorium, what that auditorium holds. Probably. Actually, Greg may know, with Greg's wife, with all the plays that she does. So it's probably.
All I know is she's had to take the set down from Mamma Mia to get ready for that.
But I think, virtual, I think is going well, what we're doing. And, I'm on the favor of caution. And I think we should stay virtual for the rest of the year and look at January as the date to do it in person. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I guess my struggle is the 9 people. I mean, what do you do when 15 show up? You send 6 away, and then we can only do it in one location where we have the capability to. You got to do both virtual and live if you go live. And what do you do with the people, and how do you choose who comes in, who you turn away?
But is the 9 people, Lori? That includes all of our staff and supervisors, right?
That is all inclusive. Anybody, there cannot be more than 9 people in the room at once.
Yeah, so you'd be at 0.
We have more than 9 people.
Yeah. There's more than 9 people on this meeting right now.
Especially if we have, speakers like the finance and the chef, those would be people. So I just think we have a good process in place to keep it virtual. And January, we look at, being serious about going back in person.
And one thing I didn't mention, and we've talked about this before, but we've been doing this since, I think we started back in April. I haven't had any issues with people making public comments the way that we've been doing it. I think that we've been handling it well. There haven't been any missed. There haven't been any late submissions that we've had to decide if they can come in or not. I think that we've kind of worked it out the best that we can, I think, under the circumstances. And like I mentioned to the board, I think that you all have been ahead of the curve on the decisions you've made, and you've been keeping health and safety of our residents and the staff at the forefront. So I think that, you know, your decision on this, I wouldn't see any reason that would change.
I agree with what's been said. The only thing I would put caution, just in the way John phrased January, you know, I don't want to mislead people to have them think that, oh, well, in January, then we'll be going live, because I'm not convinced it's going to be any better in January. If it is, great, but I don't want people to feel like we're saying November and December are virtual, and then January would be in person. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, that's fair, Greg. I agree. I think we just maybe reevaluate come January, and if we're still in a bad place, then, you know, we just continue to virtual. So yeah, I don't think we should put a target out there until we know what's going on.
Good point, man. Yeah, good point. Joe, Michelle,
Well, I think I'm ready to have people in. I think that a lot of the other municipalities are doing so. And I think if there are precautions taken, which I think we have been taking them, all the employees have complied, and I think they're intelligent enough to know how to follow the rules. And I think the people, you know, if they don't follow them, then they have to leave. But I really think it's time to let our public in.
so how would you do that, Michelle? If you have 9 people allowed, I guess we'd have to have a minimum of 5 staff.
I would like to talk to Lori and find out where she found that and talk to them, because I know several that I've talked to that have as many supervisors as we do, and they still have audience come in. So I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I just think, you know, we're getting further and further away from what we're supposed to be doing here, and we're supposed to serve public. And I don't like getting on looking at a computer every time. I'd like to hear from the public. Like to have them here and ask questions, and that's the reason why. I don't feel as if I'm doing the proper service, giving them the proper service without them being here.
Joe, any comments or motion from anyone?
Sorry, if I could just respond to what Michelle just said about where the number came from. The 9 comes from the Governor Wolf released new guidance last week. There's a maximum occupancy calculator that he released for indoor gatherings. I sent it out by email to all of the board members. We're only allowed, because our venue can only accommodate 0 to 2,000 people. We can only have 20% of our maximum occupancy. The township meeting room, the fire code, the building, the occupancy for the room is 45 people, so we can only have 9 people according to that calculator.
Okay,
So that's where that number came from.
thank you.
I mean, again, look, when it comes to, and we talk about discussions and questions back and forth. I think we've talked about it, where the public does have an opportunity to make their comments just as they would. It's really not supposed to be give and take. And again, I know that we've been liberal at times, and we have gone back and forth. And I think that, considering the situation, that, you know, that we do need to kind of continue to go virtual. Just in our office, we had a case and basically shut it down. The people that come in had to go home, had to sanitize the whole thing. Just an absolute mess, the amount of money that was spent. in the office down in Virginia was just crazy from somebody coming into the office. I mean, look, in a perfect world, we go back. I mean, I'd much rather do that. Look, I want to be at Penn State football games. I want to be at St. Joe's basketball. All the things that we had done that there's caution. I mean, games are being played in front of no people. So I just think until these numbers are down and people are comfortable, that we continue to do the best that we possibly can, which I think we are. And do the township business for the residents, and do it virtual until, again, there's a level of safety.
As a society, we have to prioritize things. And to me, the priorities need to be helping businesses and getting kids into school. And any other activities that create the possibility of a spread should be held off on. So if you can hold off on it, you should. And to me, this is something we can hold off on.
All right.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to authorize advertising of public meetings for November and December to continue as is virtually. So that's four meetings, I think, right, Lori? And we already did the budget one, so this would be 4 meetings November.
There might be one budget one in November, but.
I think we did that already, though, Dave.
Okay.
Yep, you did all the budget
2
meetings.
November and 2 December meetings to be advertised virtually.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
4-1. Ayes have it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good discussion. Move on to department reports. Joe, you want to lead off?
Sure, just 2 quick items. The Butter Lane Culvert project, we are having a pre-construction meeting with H&K Group and the appropriate utility companies tomorrow afternoon. Have a better idea of when that construction will start. They're anxious to get in there. However, they will need to implement the work zone traffic control signage, and I spoke with the township staff, and we're also sending notices out to the appropriate residents to inform them that their road will be closed. However, there'll be a detour established to allow for traffic as well as bus traffic to proceed on to Filbert. Second update is the Hilldale Storm Sewer Project. We're completing the design and prepared a contract specifications. I'll be forwarding that information over to the township staff for their review, and hopefully we'll be in a position in an upcoming board meeting to seek approval to solicit bids or publicly solicit bids for that storm sewer project. Hopefully this year that we can get good prices so that we can begin that project. So they're the 2 items. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Liz, do you want to go?
I have nothing to report at this time, unless you have any questions for me.
Do we need to announce executive?
Yes, you do.
Okay, I'll do that, or do you want to?
We had an executive session at 6 o'clock this evening to discuss personnel issues and a potential litigation item.
Great, thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Chief?
Just one item. We'd just like to take a moment to recognize Sergeant Michael Bailey and Sergeant Ted Liss. Sergeant Bailey will be retiring next week, and Sergeant Liss another 2 to 4 weeks after that. Sergeant Bailey has served the citizens of Exeter Township for 31 years, and Sergeant Liss for 30 years. Both men have worked for both the detective and patrol units, and I'd like to thank them for their dedication and service, and I wish them both the best as they start their next chapter in their lives. And I know the police department will definitely miss them and their expertise and knowledge.
Thanks, Chief. Clarence?
They completed the sidewalk and curb that we talked about at the last meeting. Comes out to a little over 500 feet of sidewalk and a little over 100 feet of curbing. Also put up some some wood fencing to match the other. If you're over down at the Farming Ridge Park, it matches the other side now to keep the kids from running out onto the street from the parking lot. Working on some catch basins, doing some cleanup, and getting ready for leaf collection.
It's coming quickly. Thanks, Clarence.
Yeah.
Just a couple quick things. The staff, we've been working on putting together a contract for our animal control services. It's going to be kind of a combination this year of being able to utilize a vehicle that is going out of commission, and also payment to the operator. I think it'll be a really good joint partnership between them. We will have the contract available. It'll be on the next agenda for the board to approve. We're continuing with the budget process. We have 2 more budget hearings scheduled, October 19th and November 2nd. Those are at 6 p.m. if anyone is interested in tuning in and watching the budget process. And we are also continuing to work with KCBA on the feasibility study for the municipal complex. They've asked for a few other small items of information, and they're working through their numbers and some preliminary design ideas that they'll be able to hopefully present to the board in November. So that's it's keeping us all very busy here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Public comments, non-agenda items. Laurie?
Yes, we had one submitted. And it was submitted by, her name is Valerie Booth.
I am asking that you would add to your agenda a nuisance in reference to animal ownership. My complaint: there is no limit to how many animals can be kept in a home, especially an attached house. Living in a connecting home of someone with excess animals, the stench it causes is unreasonable and a nuisance, though the animal ownership is unlimited according to the most recent ordinance. Please consider a limit, as it states in the nuisance ordinance. A stench is a nuisance, making it impossible to enjoy my home. I have the right to live and enjoy my space without animal odor coming through the walls. I don't or never have owned any animals. It's without saying residents own and enjoy animals. When the number owned causes problems for a neighbor, should be addressed. I am asking the township review these ordinances and revise its wording. I have tried to resolve the problem with the neighbor directly to no avail, only to find a very hostile situation. With her cursing and name-calling, I contacted Representative Judy Schwank and was advised to write the township, as I am doing for the second time. An email was sent to this same contact in July 17th, 2020, for which there has been no contact or acknowledgement from the township. B, nor has it been on your meeting agenda since. Put yourself in my shoes and try to see the need for a revision. Looking forward to seeing it addressed on the agenda in the upcoming meeting.
Thanks, Laurie. I have not looked this up. I don't know if Will or Jeff or anyone knows this, but I thought there was a limit. I thought for dogs it was 5, and I don't know, but I don't know the ordinance. Is anyone aware of anything?
Currently, the ordinance does not limit the number of residential pets that you may have. The staff has been aware of this issue. This goes back quite some time. First, it was dealt with by Will Bruger, and now Jason has stepped in, is dealing with it, trying to work some arrangement out between the neighbor and Miss Booth. The home does have some issues. It's a townhouse unit, and as you know, townhouse units, sometimes you can hear and smell things between the units. And in this particular case, there are a number of pets there. The Humane Society has already been involved. They have been to the location, and I believe the owner had removed a number of animals, and the Humane Society, I believe, also gave it what they called a clean bill of health, that the animals were being well taken care of, they were all healthy, up to date on shots, things of that nature. It's an unfortunate situation, but under our current ordinance, there's not a whole lot that we could do in terms of limiting the number of pets. I do know that it would be a very unpopular issue with many residents that do own numerous pets. Where do you determine what is an appropriate number of pets? Is it dogs, cats? Is it a combination? If you have other pets that are in a cage, where do you draw the line? It's a very difficult item to enforce. I sympathize with the resident, but at this time with our ordinance, there's really not a whole lot we can do. In terms of citing the neighbor, if the neighbor is cited and goes before the magistrate, the issue of a nuisance is somewhat subjective in terms of what one person considers excessive odors and what somebody does not. So it's an unfortunate situation going to the magistrate. How the magistrate would rule on that, we really don't know. I know the neighbor that has the pets has offered some relief to the neighbor in terms of offering to have the house sanitized and cleaned. The people that have the pets actually have a cleaning service comes in, a maid service. So it's not that it's not being, there's an attempt to address it. It's just that it's an unfortunate situation. We are aware of it. We're continuing to work on this. It was not put on the agenda because this is really, at this point, it's an enforcement issue. If the board would like the staff to research and draft a possible ordinance change, we would gladly do that. But just be forewarned that it may become a very unpopular issue given the number of residents that have multiple pets in their homes. And it is a very difficult ordinance to enforce.
Thanks, Jeff. Supervisor reports. Michelle?
I noticed on the check run that there were a lot of items for LTL and OLI. I'm just wondering, I have no problem with them doing it. I'm just wondering why LTL is being sent. What kind of things are being sent to them?
LTL is our sewage enforcement officer.
Oh, they're sewage enforcement officer. Okay, I didn't know if they're doing any engineering or not. Thank
They just do sewage enforcement.
you. Okay. And the pensions that we passed, there was a bunch of money going to be sent for the pensions. Could I please come in, someone can call me or just print it out for me about the pensions? I don't know who they're going to, anything about them, so I have a better idea when I talk about them, if you don't mind. And I guess that's enough for tonight. And I wish everyone at home a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. John?
Just make sure we're careful, Michelle, with printed documents. I'll just leave it at that. And to the chief, please give
Excuse me?
Detective Liss and Officer Bailey my best and a great job that they've done over the years for the township. And two other things, Dave. To Jeff, how's the recycling RFP going?
Did you hear that, Jeff?
Jeff? Jeff, do you have an update on the recycling RFP?
Yeah, we are working on that. Looking at, I'm sorry, it didn't come through clear on
That's
my.
okay.
Yeah, we're working on the issue of once or twice a week, or once a month or twice a month collection, and also the issue of where it's going to be taken. So that will be coming out. We'll be putting that item out there very shortly.
Is that it, John?
Thanks. And then I just, sorry, my internet is actually acting up as well. The only other thing I had was, I got a resident talking about the gun club. Was there a issue there with the noise ordinance? Never at the gun club over by Pennsylvania Avenue?
There is there's an issue related to the expansion that is being proposed with the gun club. A violation letter was sent to the gun club, and as a result of that, they are going to be filing for a variance. I believe either a variance or a special exception. I know Will would be able to give you some more details. I'll be able to forward. It has not been applied for yet. Has not been submitted to the township. They would give a notification by the zoning department regarding the issues. And because of that, we're already getting right to know requests for something that hasn't even happened yet. So.
Okay, thanks. That's all I had, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Greg?
I want to congratulate the two officers on their service to the township. I'd also like to share that Michelle and I came in and met with Jeff and Laurie concerning the communications. Again, I want to praise her for the job she's done with the electronic newsletter. We spent some time talking about what the printed version will look like, and we kind of settled in on a quarterly printed version of the key elements from the electronic newsletter, so it still could be timely. And then the other thing is, Michelle and I talked with Jeff about the RFP for the restaurant. I know there's a lot of interest in that, and he had shared with us that hopefully it will be done by the end of the month. So hopefully we can get that out and start looking for someone. That's it.
Thanks, Greg. Joe?
I as well want to congratulate and thank our retiring officers. I mean, I believe 61, 62 years combined of public service says a lot. So enjoy the time. And with the police, I'm going to be participating this week in a Beat the Supervisor contest, not the Beat the Supervisor that many would probably like to participate in. We are going to be hitting shots on the 15th hole. I believe I'm going to, Greg, I guess I'm going to hit a bunch of shots, try to clear the creek, and a bunch of participants are going to try to hit it closer to me to win valuable prizes. But I'm looking forward to sharing the day. It's a double shotgun. In other words, the Reading has 2 outings that day for the police department for the outing of, a couple hundred people. It's just tremendous and unheard of. So look forward to Saturday.
Yeah, can I add to that? Joe and I talked. I gave him the more difficult hole. I'm taking hole 4. It's a short shot over the water, so I shouldn't put any balls in the water. Joe needs to bring a couple dozen to the event.
Good job. Thanks, everyone. And yeah, I'll just say again, I mean, very informative, again, electronic newsletter. Congrats to the team putting that together and Laurie. And, I think that's been very informative, seeing that and all the information, the timely information that's in there as opposed to some past when it was a little outdated. And congrats to Officer List and Officer Bailey. And that's all I have for tonight. So take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Joe, very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Have a great evening, everyone.
Have a great night.
Night, everyone.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Right. Good night.
Good night.